Okay.
What's the wireless password in the room? Is there one?
Just I'm gonna leave them unmuted for now. Okay.
Okay, that sounds great.
Mr. Dugan here.
A hot mic inside, so. What do you think about?
You know, that's cool.
I did Unga with Mike.
Win Hines was there when I was there.
All right, Mike.
Nasworthy, Jay
All
Nasworthy.
right, these are live, right?
Who?
These are live.
All right, we're going to go ahead and get started. Good morning. I guess it's almost afternoon. I'm Jason Anavitarde. Have the honor to chair this committee to talk about cybersecurity and creating a cyber force in Georgia. Before we begin, I'm going to ask my colleague whose backyard we're in, Senator Jones, if he'll give a word of prayer before we begin.
Please bow our heads. Thank you, Father, for giving us the opportunity to come together to do the work of the people of Georgia. Allow us to do that work in a space of trust and honesty, and also to make sure it does your will. In your name we pray. Amen.
Thank you, Senator. Real quick before we begin, I do want to thank Senator Jones for hosting us and Augusta University for having us here in Augusta for the second meeting of the study committee. I know a lot of preparation went into this by many individuals. Also do want to recognize our Senate press staff who is here. This meeting is being live streamed for the public. So I know there's a lot of folks that did not want to travel down to Augusta. And if you're watching, y'all are missing out. Your loss. But we're going to have a great meeting today. Also, too, we will circulate and make sure that you have an opportunity to submit comments in written form or feedback if you were not able to attend today, or if you don't get an opportunity to present at this meeting or the final meeting, which will be December 13th at the state capitol. We will send that notice around to folks if it's not already been sent around. But we would request that if you have comments, recommendations, things that you would like the committee to consider, we receive those before Thanksgiving, so we can give our staff the time to prepare for the last meeting. And if there's any dialogue we need to have, please reach out to any one of the senators up here. If you don't know how to get a hold of us, Anna from my office will make sure you get connected following this meeting. Real quick, I'd like the committee, if they'll just briefly introduce themselves, and then we'll get started.
State Senator Harold Jones, representing Augusta, Georgia.
John Albers, represent District 56, the suburbs of Atlanta.
Mike Dugan, District 30. That's primarily Carroll, Douglas, Paulding, and Haralson counties.
Getting used to that Harrelson thing, aren't you? I was kidding. Well, thank you all for being here. And I believe Senator Rhett on the Zoom, I believe he was going to dial in. Okay. Well, I know Senator Rhett's going to join us at some point. So let's get started. And I'm going to be cognizant of time and try and do our best to be done at 2 o'clock. We have a jam-packed agenda. If you have thoughts or comments, please just be mindful of your time. And I know some of the senators, as we go along, will probably have questions as we go through this process. So Russell Keene, I'm going to invite you up if you want to give a welcome on behalf of AU. And again, thank you for having us.
Sure. Thank you, Chairman Anavitarde and Leader Dugan, Senator Albers, and Senator Jones. Thank you all for being here on behalf of Dr. Keel and our entire executive vice presidents and president's cabinet. We will welcome you to Augusta anytime at Augusta University. We are Georgia's health sciences institution, but we are quickly becoming a catalyst for cyber. This is your cyber center, Georgia Cyber Center, and it's a unique collaboration with government, academia, and the private sector. And being the health sciences university, we kind of look at the cyber as an immune system. strong cyber, strong immune system. And that's what we try to build here. And so we're also home to the Medical College of Georgia, the Dental College of Georgia, Children's Hospital of Georgia, and several other colleges and universities. So we get a lot of support from the state and from each of you. And we just want to thank you for all of that you've done and all that you're already planning on doing. So appreciate y'all being here.
Thank you. Thanks for having us. Next up, I think we're gonna have a panel about information sharing. Rod Arthur, the Director of Cybersecurity Operations here at Augusta University. You wanna, is Rod here? Okay, I'll let you kind of take over and you can introduce our guests for today. Thank you, sir.
All right, how about now? All right. So I want to make sure I introduce our panel members first. So to my left is Sean Sojak. He is our Senior Special Agent with the U.S. Secret Service. Next to him is Jeff Worthington, the Executive Strategist and Cyber Advisor for CrowdStrike. And then we have Mike Opacity, who is the Augusta Chapter President with InfraGard. I'm going to start with some opening comments to set the stage for this panel discussion. And then one of the attendees was supposed to be Mike Davis, who is the interim or the acting state chief information security officer who could not be here today. So I'm going to also follow up with his comments. So starting off today, I just want to set the stage here with some of these comments. So we've obviously seen a sharp increase in cyber attack over the last few years. Globally, the financial losses due to cybercrime have eclipsed $7 trillion. Here in Georgia, the estimate is between $500 and $700 million in financial losses due to cybercrime, according to our own Georgia Bureau of Investigation. The sharp increase in cyber attacks we've experienced over the past years is due to several factors. The most obvious one is the continuous increase in cyber capability by nation states, such as China, Russia, Iran, and North Korea, and all of their criminal proxies. Another factor is the change in our adversaries' intent due to ongoing geopolitical events like the war in Ukraine or Chinese expansion ambitions. Part of that change is a shift to softer, more vulnerable targets like small businesses and local and state governments, which has significant economic impacts. For example, 43% of all cyber attacks in the US last year were on small businesses, and over half of those businesses are going out of business within 1 year after suffering a data breach or a ransomware attack. And to hit close to home, the two individuals the FBI indicted for the ransomware attack on the city of Atlanta in 2018 were from Iran. The last factor, though, is that our communications, information systems, and industrial control systems were not designed to be secure, so we are continuously playing catch up to patch our systems and make them more secure. The problem is that our adversaries are moving much quicker than we are, discovering vulnerabilities and developing exploits faster than we can develop defensive measures. And of course, the weakest link of any system is the human being that either misconfigures a firewall, clicks on a phishing email, or inadvertently downloads a piece of malware. We should not be surprised that dictatorial regimes move faster than the US because those governments have much tighter controls over their private sector and academia. In order for us to compete, we have to break down many of the stovepipes that exist both within government itself and between the government and the private sector. Ultimately, the goal of this committee is to help prevent cyber attacks in the state and, if needed, respond appropriately to mitigate and effectively recover from an attack. The focus of this panel is on the prevention side and the critical role of information sharing. Too often we see the same cyber actor use the same tools and techniques to exploit multiple targets, and we have to get better at stopping that cycle and incur more cost on our adversaries. I'll turn to our illustrious panel here, and you can hear their perspectives on how we share information today, how it has been effective, but also how it can be improved. So as I mentioned before, Mike Davis, who is our acting state chief information security officer, could not be here with us today. But he was scheduled to be on this panel. And I want to open up with, set the stage with his comments that he did send in to provide the perspective from the state level. So the Georgia Technology Authority's Office of Information Security assists state agencies with cybersecurity capabilities from assessments to information sharing. However, OIS has limited capacity and suffers from the same rapid turnover rate as other state and local entities. OIS is also integrated into the MS-ISAC, the Multi-State Information Sharing and Analysis Center. However, most of the intelligence products coming from the MS-ISAC are not tailored to nor actionable by the intelligence products coming, are not actionable by the state agencies, and rarely does any relevant information get disseminated down to the local government level or to the private sector. We also need to improve the dissemination process within the state agencies themselves. As mentioned, the rapid turnover of state agency IT and cybersecurity personnel make it difficult to maintain an up-to-date dissemination roster. We can certainly take steps to improve internal dissemination methods, but one thing to consider is a state-level information sharing portal that can include all levels of government as well as the private sector. We also need to develop or leverage another organization's analytic capacity that can tailor threat intelligence products and recommended mitigation measures to consumers within the state. For example, if there is a national cyber threat to hospitals, we need to tailor the products to hospital CIOs and CISOs so that they can take immediate actions that can prevent a cyber attack on their hospital. Federal entities such as CISA, the Cybersecurity and Infrastructure Security Agency, disseminates some of these reports, but even those do not always make it to the appropriate level for execution. This is obviously a complex problem that requires a lot more discussion across all levels of government and between the public and private sectors, but we look forward to working together with this group and others to find more effective, affordable, and sustainable methods to information sharing here in Georgia. Again, those were Mike Davis's comments. I mentioned earlier about the need to bring together the public and private sector. One organization that does just that is InfraGard, which is a public-private partnership between the Federal Bureau of Investigation and the private sector, specifically related to the protection of our critical infrastructure. Michael Pasadena, can you tell us a little more about the mission of InfraGard and the activities that are ongoing in Georgia? And can you also describe some successes and some of the challenges?
I'll certainly try, Rod. Thank you. Good morning, everyone. CSRA InfraGard is a relatively new subchapter of the Atlanta InfraGard instance. We're the only subchapter besides Guam. As Rod mentioned, it's the FBI outreach program to critical infrastructure, and the membership of InfraGard is vetted actually twice. The individuals are vetted, and also that they have a position in a recognized critical infrastructure role. InfraGard offers two major components of membership. It has a network portal on which you could find industry best practice, intel product, current threat and mitigations. It'll also describe training opportunities and regional and national conferences. There's also a quarterly meeting, which allows you to have speakers on relevant events. There's networking opportunities, and it's also a chance to reach out to the local field office of the FBI for both to meet and greet. So the day that you meet them when you're having a bad day isn't the first time you've talked to them. And also just to, to potentially talk to them about a problem that you are experiencing. CSRA, as I mentioned, is a relatively new subchapter. We've had our second meeting last week. We have some really good participation. The regional focus in the CSRA allows us to do things that we couldn't just do as a member under Atlanta. Not that they wouldn't want to do it, but it's difficult. We will have a focus here on nuclear. We have a focus on cyber. We also have clear defense contractors that aren't as prevalent in other areas of the state. In terms of challenges, again, we have great cyber representation, but one of the challenges we kind of anticipate is reaching into the other areas of critical infrastructure, bringing those into our organization so that we can focus on specific threats to other areas of critical infrastructure, both cyber-based and others. And we'd probably address that on a subcommittee level so that we could focus and wherever there's interest, go on.
Thank you, Mike. To demonstrate an example of the collaboration between the state and federal government, I want to bring in Senior Special Agent Sean Sojak from the U.S. Secret Service. Sean, can you describe your current relationship with the Georgia Bureau of Investigation Cybercrime Center here at the Georgia Cyber Center, how you ended up here, and your relationship with the Army Cyber Command and NSA? And finally, what has been the benefit of these relationships and what else can be done to protect us from cyber attacks that bring perpetrators to justice?
So in 2019, the then special agent in charge of the Atlanta field office, Ms. Cheadle, who is now the director of the United States Secret Service, came to the Georgia Cyber Center and saw the unique aspects of what was going on here. She identified an area of opportunity that we had not previously had and began to look for a long-term temporary duty assignment for somebody to come here for 18 months to determine the viability of placing somebody here full-time. The Georgia Bureau of Investigations was kind enough to offer us office space on their fourth floor here, and we immediately got involved with what they were doing. I come from a computer forensics background, and I saw the unique capabilities that they have within their facility. They are second to none. I've been stationed throughout the country, and I can tell you that what you have here and what has been built is very unique. You need to preserve that. Do everything you can, because the continuity of getting the qualified, trained people within that environment is very difficult, and they will be hired away by private sector. So making sure that that continuity and you keep those people within that space is extremely important. We have partnered with them utilizing our NCFI, which is our National Cyber Investigation Training Center in Hoover, Alabama. And we've sent some of their digital forensics investigators down there for continued training. One of the areas that we have seen progress is through network intrusion. No federal agency can do this on their own. And so looking at what you are seeing on the state level, Mr. Arthur alluded to the fact of the Atlanta hospital systems break, but you also have sharp ransomware breach that took place. Those were millions of dollars of critical infrastructure that were funneled over to nation state areas. That's the second part of my job. Is I am a full embed LNO at Army Cyber Command. So we've signed MOUs, and I work together with them utilizing Title 10, Title 50, and our Title 18 to look at overlapping interests that we have in nation state groups and foreign entities that we can prosecute criminally for items that they've done here within the United States. Two of those are specifically the ransomware, the SamSam ransomware breach that went back to Iran, and then the Sharp Industries breach that went to Russia. We are actively involved in prosecuting both of those. But I think that most importantly is it all starts on the state and local level. That is the backbone. What is going on right here is going to determine how we are able to effectively approach the crime. Making sure that you maintain a strong cybersecurity program at the state and local level is key to us being able to do our job. When you look at the ransomware and BEC frauds, the breaches that take place here, having a group of people who can work to extract that information and get that to the people who need to investigate it further. The cooperation that we have with prosecuting money mules, which we've done over the last 2 years since I've been here very vehemently, and we've been able to provide funding back to the GBI for work that they helped us with. Those are all areas that are extremely important to success, but the relationships that are being built now, I can see a huge benefit for the future, and I believe that we need to maintain those at all costs.
Thank you. Finally, I want to turn to the private sector, which might end up being our savior in this complex threat environment. Jeff, your company is helping secure millions of endpoints around the world. You're also leveraging your global presence and expansive sensor network to produce extraordinary cyber threat intelligence products. Can you tell us more about your company's mission and how your threat intelligence is helping secure your customers? And also, from your point of view, how do you think the government and the private sector can work better together to ensure a safer America?
Hey, thank you very much. And on behalf of our CEO, George Kurtz, and the entire team at CrowdStrike, I really do appreciate the opportunity to come speak today. Yeah, I could probably talk for an hour or two on those three things right there. And so because of everyone's time, I will certainly try and keep my comments smaller. At CrowdStrike, and it's interesting you use the term, what's our mission? And I'm a retired Army officer, 30 years in the DoD, and we tie ourselves to a mission. It helps us understand what we're supposed to do every day. And at CrowdStrike, we say that we don't have a mission, we're on a mission. It's to stop breaches. And that's very simple. Everyone can understand that. It's 3 words. And when I was in Joint Special Operations Command as the Chief Information Officer there, our commanding general said that your proximity to the target does not equate to your worth to the organization. And I thought that was very important. And it's something that I think correlates very well to CrowdStrike. Because just if you're not the operator that is on the end of that pointy spear, you may not be the most important person in the organization. And so everyone at CrowdStrike is singularly focused on one thing, and it's to stop breaches. Whether you're the coder that is writing the new algorithm that we're using in our models, or whether you're the person in human resources that's trying to recruit the right people that we want out there defending our critical infrastructure and other organizations, the entire company is behind one thing, and that's to stop breaches. That's extremely important today. But threat intelligence certainly is a key part of what we do. When we reach back into my Army time, it's great to understand yourself. And Sun Tzu even said, understand yourself, understand your adversary, you'll be successful every time, or something like that. I know I'm paraphrasing his words, but we do believe that you can have the best defense, but if you don't understand who is coming against you and what they're using against you, you really will not ensure success. You could be defending against a threat that is not even a threat to you and wasting time and resources, people and money in these cases on a defense that's not worthy. So what CrowdStrike provides is a very granular understanding of the adversary, who they are, what they're going after, the methods they're using, and then providing that with the context and the understanding we get from these deep and dark web chat sites on what they're discussing and how they're using our information against us in the public and private sector. That really helps build the full intelligence picture, because it's extremely important. 20 years ago, we were focused on sharing indicators of compromise. So that's, I got to my house and my door was open. I now know somebody has been in my house. I don't really know where they are. And that was what we did 20 years ago. That doesn't work today because of how fast the adversary is. If we're talking e-criminals, so the criminal gangs, on average last year, it was about 84 minutes from the time that an e-crime actor started to go against your network until they were in your network, now moving laterally. So now it's a different mission. We're not trying to keep them out. Now we're trying to find, where they are. So they're now in your bedroom, eating your pizza from your refrigerator, and you're trying to figure out where they are inside your house. But the indicators of attack that we use now are those that somebody is turning the doorknob a certain way, and that's not the way that Jeff usually turns the doorknob. Something bad may be going on. So you have to use indicators of attack. Something is going on to prevent that 84-minute breakout time is what we call that. So at CrowdStrike, like you stated, you have millions of endpoints. So I would say it's in excess of about 20,000 customers, global customers, in excess of 50 million or so sensors, and we're collecting right at around 2 trillion events per day. So we're bringing all of this information into what we call a threat graph. And what is really good about the network that we have is called community immunity. If you are a CrowdStrike customer, or if you're a member of even some of these organizations we're a partner with, whether it's InfraGard or JCDC at the Cybersecurity Infrastructure and Security Agency or others, then you get the benefit of things that we're seeing across the globe. So it's kind of like the weather. 20 years ago, we had really good weather reports. 100 years ago, we did not have good weather reports. So you couldn't prepare for what was going to happen to you. You didn't know that the hurricane was going to hit Fort Myers until it was at Fort Myers, and you couldn't prepare properly. But today, the way we're using indicators of attack is just like we're seeing the weather. We're seeing it so far out that we're able to prepare for the attack that's coming against us and prevent it at a much greater rate. 21 states in the United States plus Puerto Rico have standardized on CrowdStrike, and about 40 other states have some version of CrowdStrike in their environments. And so what that's doing is it's allowing something to happen on the other side of the globe, feed what we know about that threat, and then provide that information to the states at speed level, so at line level. It's going electronically down into our ability to protect the endpoints. That's we find that extremely important. But what is even more powerful are these public-private partnerships we talk about, whether it's InfraGard or with the various government agencies that CrowdStrike is a member with. I believe that we fight better as a nation when we're a joint interagency task force. And we had one of these in the Department of Defense. We mashed everyone together in one room, providing the same sight picture, the same intelligence that someone else is getting to you so that you can take an action against something that you didn't know was a problem. So I would argue that we need more of these public-private partnerships, because an organization, plenty of small businesses, half that you said are attacked, or 43% go out of business, something like that, general statistic, have a lot of information about the adversary, but they have no ability to action it. There are government organizations that have the authority and the ability to take action on some of those things. So putting together private companies with public organizations and governments to provide that really granular picture about what is going on, and then take action quickly, not a report, and reports are great, but reports aren't at speed. And remember, we have 84 minutes to do something. I think that will provide the better defense on scale across the nation, not just here in Georgia, but across the nation, to better protect our environment. So again, I appreciate the time, the opportunity to speak, and I look forward to any questions that we get. Thank you very much, Rod.
All right. Thank you, Jeff. I'm going to conclude here with our panel, and we're going to try to hold questions until after the second panel was completed, just in the essence of time.
And I actually have 2 questions I want to ask before we,
Okay.
that's okay.
All right. That's fine.
Thank you.
So I do want to say from my perspective as the Director for Cybersecurity Operations here at Augusta University, the threat information, the threat intel, the tippers, the things that we can receive as those network defenders, the timeliness of that is critical. Every minute matters when you're dealing with a cyber attack, especially if you're dealing with a ransomware, some type of wiper attack. So I can definitely vouch for all of our partners that are doing, what we can to improve in that dissemination of information. We've also, from a state level perspective, have been asked to provide at a federal level. DHS has come in and asked us from our Security Operations Center. We see every day the attacks and scanning and different checks for vulnerabilities on our external firewall. This happens every day on a minute by minute basis. And we can see the IP addresses that these attacks, scans, and different things are originating from. So they've asked us on a monthly basis to start pulling together, and these critical state-sponsored actors, the Russians, the Chinese, the Iranians, they want to know what IP addresses that are being used from those countries to scan our networks, to help them paint that larger picture as to what's really going on, because we only see that one device being attacked. They're looking at it across the country. So we're trying to also provide that information up as well as receiving information down. So a couple of takeaways from our panel that I think we will agree that we're doing some good things with regards to information sharing. Mike Davis mentioned the state level information sharing portal is something to maybe look into and pursue. But I do believe that we all need to do better so we can prevent cyber attacks before they happen. We don't like to be responding to them. We want to stop them from happening. But if an attack does happen, we do need to disseminate the information quickly so other organizations can take the appropriate preventative measures that are needed. We obviously won't solve this complex problem here in a 30-minute panel discussion, but I would like to see a continued dialogue and have an opportunity to present some viable options that are actionable by the state. So with that, you said you had a couple of questions before we turn it
Yeah, I
over to the other
appreciate
panel.
that. I mean, Rod, that's good stuff. So one of the questions, I want to go back to something Jeff said. We talk about predictability, I guess, in the sense of, being efficient, unintended, striking when things happen. So making a broader comment that we know state government is complex. It operates in silos. In many cases, it's kind of ineffective in terms of sharing information. So we know in this state, or at least, and y'all can keep me straight. This is where I wish GTA had showed up. but like, they oversee in terms of, we talk about cyber and cyber policy and those pieces that go to the agencies that they manage technology for. I know each of the constitutional officers also have kind of their own cyber programs. Then you got the rest of state government that's doing whatever it is they're doing in their agencies to stay safe and be effective. So if the purpose, to be effective in having a strong cybersecurity presence in state government and have greater predictability before the hurricane shows up, at some point, how do those systems or should those systems all be either aligned or silos removed in kind of rowing in the same direction, without, Senator Jones, who runs agency A, that may say, hey, I think we should do A, B, C, and D. Over here, we're doing maybe A, B, and C because of funding issue or a political issue or something else. And, the continuum is that, everybody's not kind of, so when an incident happens, I'm not saying has happened, but when an incident happens, how do we lessen the impact if everyone is not necessarily following the same policies and protocols and rules, and then, ways that they're responding to law enforcement or whatever, and they may, I'm not making assumptions or saying that, but, how do we remove the silos in order to incidents happen and have greater predictability, to be more effective to keep Georgia assets safe? Like, what is y'all's response to that? Not to put you on the spot.
Are you referring to public or private sector?
Public.
With public sector, I believe that begins with policies. You create policies as to how a response is supposed to take place. And people such as InfraGard, when you start talking about the ability to put entities together to have conversations ahead of time, and then there needs to be a policy set in place as to what the response is going to look like. And that needs to be ever evolving. That response needs to look different next year than it does right now. This is not something that you set a policy and 10 years from now, it's going to be the same one, because it always has to be evolving. But that is extremely important, because if you wait for a breach to happen and then determine what your response is going to be, you're going to fail.
What, I agree with you on the policy piece entirely. And having that plan up front of, what to do when you get hit, because you're going to get hit sooner or later. You're going to get punched. But states like Georgia, who are, and I apologize if I misused the word standardized, but as you are fielding a solution in CrowdStrike, whether those agencies are operating in silos or not, they're getting the benefit of the cloud AI enabled threat intelligence and collection that CrowdStrike provides overhead, regardless of what the policies may be. Now, certainly there are some other capabilities that may or may not be resident in each of the agencies. But if you're protecting the endpoint, which is what they're going against the endpoint. That's where the data is on the endpoint. If you're protecting the endpoint with a single technology, then I think that helps to break down some of those barriers, because all that information is also being reported up so that you get a common understanding of what is going on. Now, how the state acts is certainly based on the policy of what you've set up, but getting that common vision, which is why I really do like that 21 states are standardized on CrowdStrike, because you're not having to wade through what an agency is providing from vendor A, what an agency is providing from vendor B and vendor C, because although we all like to say that we're doing things the same, we're not doing it identically the same, and they may not provide the common picture. So that's why I think Georgia does have a leg up with those other 20 states on doing just that, if they answer your
Yeah,
question.
and I mean, I'll comment to that too. I mean, I think that's really good feedback, and I appreciate both those comments. Philosophically for me, and I won't speak for any other thoughts and beliefs, but I mean, if we're good stewards first of taxpayer money, I think budgeting appropriately, think about, the utilization of a single technology. And I guess when we say that too, there's a repetition of education, there's a repetition of training, there's a repetition of everything that goes on to make sure that technology is effective and implemented or acted on. All systems are hopefully perfect or compliant or whatever. My concern is that, within state government, sometimes, we like to contract things out. We like to go find 3 or 4 technologies to put a Band-Aid on it, and then we'll eventually get to it. But to me, at times, it seems like, that could create more vulnerabilities over time, especially if, again, agency over here with Senator Jones is kind of piecemealing something together, and agency B over here. And how do we create this kind of consistency across the board? So that, when we write those policies, we know everything's going to be succinct. And I know it's not perfect and this is very complex, but just globally thinking, when we think about budget, investment, tools, training, all those things. And then, the biggest thing think we heard when we were at Georgia Tech in the first meeting was the workforce challenges, in terms of retention and everything else. Folks are implementing those policies. So kind of my reaction. I think Senator Albers had a couple.
If I could add one thing to that. So this summer, the University System of Georgia made a decision to change the way that they're going to audit our IT departments and our cybersecurity using the 18 CIS critical controls. And so I think you get now a common framework that everybody's going to be assessed against. And I think that's a great step forward. That could also be spread across other state agencies as well.
And when I talked about policy and what I was referring to is, if you're looking at your state agencies, and I'm going to say a hypothetical here. So you've got the driver's license bureau, and for some reason there was a business email compromise at the very lowest level at the driver's license bureau. And because those were not reported, now that system is infected. And that person is still that bad actor is still inside that system, and they're waiting. And your policy was to allow each individual group to take care of it themselves, rather than reporting that up so it can be dealt with. Those are extremely important. You can't silo those agencies, whether it's your roads department or your driver's license bureau, whatever it is. They have to have a policy of reportability, and where is that going and how is it going to look like and who is going to respond to that. It needs to be exact across the board so that everyone understands what you're dealing with, and then we can begin to help from our aspect. If you're letting us be a year behind because no one reported that they're so deep into that system, it might never get out. So when I say policy, that's what I'm referring to.
Yeah, thank you, Mr. Chairman. Following up, Jeff, I love the analogy of the forecast and the coming storm, as the chairman mentioned. And I've been in part of InfraGard for a very, very long time. Expanding on your question, as far as participation from all the folks that either have a CISO role or a similar role, both in state government, I'm going to add in now the counties, the school systems, and the cities. Do you have any idea of how many are participating and with either InfraGard or really in the know to be preparing for those storms?
With InfraGard, we have had some participation from local universities, and I believe also the local county school has been out there at least attending and looking into it. So I think there's interest. But to the greater point, is there collaboration? Are there secure channels of communication? Are there ways to disseminate information? Are there ways to recognize and create visibility of a threat? I don't know that we're mature enough yet to get there.
And a follow-up question would be, when we have something major that happens in any other area of law enforcement, as an example, right? Especially if it's going to be something that's going to hit either a certain part of the state or statewide, we're actually very good typically of communicating that out, right? Whether it starts at a federal agency or here at the GBI or the State Patrol, then out to all our local law enforcement. Seems to me that one of the things we have to get much better at is doing the same thing for anything that's cyber related. So if the storm is coming, that we are communicating, people are preparing and they're acknowledging, et cetera. And I know part of that is policy, certainly, but part of that also is going to be personal responsibility, I would think, for each one of those governments in order to be doing what they need to do to protect the citizens that they serve. So I'm curious as to your all's thoughts on that, and or have you seen this happen better in other states?
So sir, if I may, I think answer your first question or first comment there. I stated earlier that you have to know your adversary. And so at CrowdStrike, we attribute, we name, I think it's 186 as of today, 186 threat actors. We bin them into nation states, e-crime actors, and then hacktivists. We have seen over the past 8-10 months now, kind of a mashing between hacktivists and e-crime and nation state, much around what's going on in Ukraine today. But we can tell with great detail which actor or actors are going after the education sector or the energy sector or state and local governments. And then even more so, what they're using, the vulnerabilities they're exploiting to take action against that organization. So I believe that and I'm hypothetically, the Department of Education in the state of Georgia could get the feeds from threat intelligence on what is being used against the education sector, and then pass that down through that silo, if that is a silo. What is being used against the transportation sector, pass it down through that silo. Now, it would be reports, but at least there would be an understanding of what is happening against something I really care about at this time. And then what should I focus my remediation efforts on? My limited people, since I'm losing people, and my limited budget, what can I focus my efforts on? What's being used against me today? And I think CrowdStrike does a very good job of breaking that down into various verticals across the globe.
And I agree. And by the way, I'm a big fan of CrowdStrike. I think you're all one of the industry leaders by far. My concern is what about everybody who doesn't have that, right? Who either has a different vendor or they're behind, et cetera. And I think what you're addressing is critical. How do we get those areas of communication in place? So thank you. I appreciate the response.
Great. Oh,
Thank you. Thank you. One of my questions was for the special agent, because one of the things you had mentioned was that when the current director came here, she saw that unique opportunity in the building. You also mentioned that the building or this place actually was second to none. And I thought you were going to kind of elaborate what makes it unique, but can you kind of go into that? You know, what does make it stand out in that way?
I'm actually glad you said that. I didn't think I'd have time to elaborate on that. I can tell you that the vision of the Georgia Cyber Center, I really hold dearly. I take great pleasure in involving myself with the Clear Defense Contractors Academia. We have 4 interns from Augusta University right now, 4 that are embedded with us. We are regularly working with them. We're working with Augusta University on looking at areas that we can glean information from and how they are doing research and future study. I just last Friday, I was meeting with one of the Clear Defense contractors that is here inside the building on products that we might be able to utilize later on. You have a very, very unique way of putting the public, private, and government groups together. I haven't seen it work like it is here anywhere else. This is a very, very unique environment. It promotes collaboration, and most places talk about it. Very few places are good at it. This place is very, very good at it. You guys should be extremely proud of what you've created here.
all right.
Can I add that you also involve the students here? And I think that's extremely important. With 700,000 open cybersecurity jobs in the country right now, involving the students in that with the public and the private partnerships is extremely good.
And I'll add to that. When I first got here, Dr. Schwarzman reached out for me, met with me personally, and really wanted our involvement. We don't see that with other universities. We generally have to go to them. They came to us, and that allowed us to now have 4 interns that are working with us and learning from us. And hopefully they're going to be getting jobs in the government sector and move through and bring their talents to us. So just a great all around, both the university and the Cyber Center.
All right. Yes, for
Thank you.
time, I'd like to go ahead and transition over to the second panel for partnerships.
Good morning and thank you. I'm Rob Dennis. I'm the Executive Director of Corporate Relations for Augusta University. On the partnership panel today, I'm joined by Dr. Tom Clark, who is the Executive Director of the CSRA Alliance for Fort Gordon, Mr. David Ivey, who's the Cyber Range Architect here at the Georgia Cyber Center, Mr. Joseph Holloway, who is the Director of the Elite Training Corps we have here, and the Cyber DevOps Engineer. And we're short one, Zach Hodges, the Vice President and COO of Cybersecurity Solutions, had an emergency that prevented him from being here this morning, but I have some remarks to make on his behalf. I want to pull on the thread a little bit from the information sharing group. That's activity that just wouldn't be viable without substantive cooperation, collaboration, and coordination, but maybe most importantly, partnerships. Opportunities like the one we're participating in today allow us to underscore the benefits of working with federal partners and technologies not always discussed in the civilian sector. Here in the CSRA, we're particularly fortunate because we have a military installation by way of Fort Gordon, as well as a national lab across the river, Savannah River National Lab. And so I think it may be a great way to get started is to ask Dr. Clark, by way of background, to set the stage for how Augusta has evolved as a national hub for cybersecurity activity.
I can't see y'all, so I'm gonna move a little bit. Senators, how are you? Nice to see you again. Fort Gordon, as many of you know, I just go over some numbers. We promote, coordinate, and advocate for them. So at the end of this, I'll have a ask for the senators that involves an interchange and a connector into the backside of the post.
We're going to take all requests.
There we go. So in 2000,
I'm just kidding.
it's good to see you, Senator Jones. Good to see you, sir. In 2010, Augusta changed. That's when the Army decided to do a cyber, they developed Army Cyber Center, and the Army Cyber Command order was given. And then it took about 4 years to turn up a cyber MOS in the military. And then in 2013, for our area, it was a monumental announcement when they said that Army Cyber would come here in 2013. In July of 2020, the 3-Star Command established their flag here. When you think about that in terms of talent and in how it changed our area, Fort Gordon grew 9,000 people in the last 8 years. And they seamlessly integrated those folks and their families to our communities. They brought folks with expendable income here to spend money in our groceries, to buy real estate, haircuts, everything. It changed. So 9,000 people in 8 years. If it was John Deere, Textron, it would be on the cover of every business magazine on how to integrate that many people and their families and do it right. And they did that. So just a couple numbers. The reason that the Georgia Cyber Center is here now is the federal government invested over $2 billion worth of infrastructure improvements on Fort Gordon with the announcement of Army Cyber. And they have another $2 billion of infrastructure improvements planned out to the year 2028. So we would ask that within your power to protect that irreversible momentum as they build a world-class cyber campus on Fort Gordon and extend the footprint of Army Cyber. So just a couple numbers. The Georgia Cyber Center then was a state investment as a result of that federal investment. Fort Gordon is less than 10 miles from here. There's 1,800 military folks who get out from Fort Gordon a year and decide either to stay in our area or to move. But many of them, this is a destination of choice. If they had a job, over 70% say they'll stay right here. And we get folks like, you can just look in this room, Tim, military officer over there in back, the sergeant behind me, they choose to stay in Georgia, all right? My wife's from here, so this is exactly where we stayed. She said we were staying here. Fort Gordon has over 32,000 folks now. They are our region's #1 employer with a $2.7 billion a year economic impact to our region. The Alliance did not stop there. We realized that we used to be a organization that combated BRAC, and many of you are very familiar with that back in 2003, they said we would be on the 2005 BRAC list, and we survived that. We don't use BRAC now. If we use that acronym, we say it means better relationships across our communities. All right, we don't let them use that word in our area anymore. We're here to stay. But the Alliance then shifted to help with K through 12 opportunities. We worked with the school districts and created a Cyber Patriot program, and we grew our teams in our high school. Those are small teams, like small football teams, but we grew them from 16 to this region has fielded over 100+ teams in their middle schools and high schools over the last 5 years. And that's building talent locally. And for the last 2 years, the Fort Gordon Cyber District Alliance for Cyber Education has been the Cyber Patriot Center of Excellence of the Year for the entire nation. So think of that. Augusta, Georgia, beating Silicon Valley at their own game through our children. So we're growing those folks, and that collaboration would not be possible. We do summer camps here, and every camp is free. Last summer, we sent 150 kids to school for free. 65% of them were minority, 58% female. All right. So we're getting after populations that would not have that opportunity. I close my initial comments with just happy Veterans Day. And I know all of you senators, so it's just great to see you again, and we appreciate your support. And if you get an opportunity to think about the west side of Fort Gordon has grown. We need a new I-20 interchange. We need an interchange and then a connector into the west side of Fort Gordon, the brand new Gate 6. So if you see that coming up, we talk about it on the Georgia Joint Defense Commission. But if you see it, please realize we need it. And I'll turn it back over to Rob.
Thank you, Tom. And thank you for your service and being a champion for the Georgia Cyber Center, Augusta University, the region, and the state. Tom ought to be getting a check from Augusta University, because he really does help promote the mission of everything we're trying to get after here. And so I just can't thank him enough.
I'll take the check.
We'll have to get Russell back anyway. But
all this goes in the minutes, so.
That's right.
Gotcha.
Yes, sir.
Any part of a comprehensive strategy for cybersecurity is contingent on collaboration and partnerships between industry, academia, and government. I think it's remarkable to hear, just as the information sharing group was talking, the relationships that Special Agent Sojak and Mr. Worthington made about partnerships and working with the university. We're in the final stages of putting together a teaming agreement with CrowdStrike that will provide opportunities for our SOC, for our SIM center, for our training program, and our range. And it's industry partners like CrowdStrike that really allow us to get after that. But today we live in a world that depends on network connections for almost every facet of our daily lives. The potential for cybersecurity threat continues to grow. And as a society, we will require bold ideas and innovation to address these challenges. No one's immune to the cyber attacks, and that means everyone here is a stakeholder. The fundamental roles we've heard about from our information sharing communities is the need for continued engagement and R&D investment to stay ahead of the ever evolving and increasingly sophisticated cyber threat landscape. So I'd like to ask and bring David Ivey into the conversation regarding engagement. The range has an architecture that allows you and your team to tailor particular scenarios or table type exercises to specific audiences that demonstrate this evolving and sophisticated landscape. Can you elaborate on the value of the range as a tool for the state in this capacity, especially as we partner to provide specific solutions?
So what we did when we built our range capabilities and what we tried to accomplish is get away from that kind of vendor lock-in mentality of how you run a range, how you do things. So we went with a 100% open source product so that we can remain agile and be able to produce products or produce environments for people to train on that are very specific to their needs. So if you needed a new capability, we throw that in there and you keep moving on with what you want to accomplish. A great example of that is our state level exercise we did in September. It was CyberDog. There were 11 state agencies that participated. We had a full red team versus blue team scenario inside of there. All of the state agencies partnered together on the blue team side to each participate and defend against active attacks. And we had we're fortunate to have a federal partner that participated in the effort as the red team, and they provided the unique skills and capabilities to create a remarkably robust training experience for all of the state agencies that they wouldn't have gotten in another capacity, or at least not that I've seen very often. The greatest part that I think came out of that was the red team and the blue team getting together at the end of the exercise and talking through every single thing that they did and going back and forth and that learning experience that they got between each other to talk about what actually happened, how I got onto your environment, what I did once I got there, and give that realization to the blue teams, the state agencies, of what that looks like from an offensive perspective and what it looked like. And they in turn did the same thing for the red team and given their blue team perspective. And it was a great collaboration on the entire exercise.
Just, Joseph, you can, these two are lockstep in what they do, and it's hard to separate what happens with the range and what happens with the training activities. If you have anything to add.
Sure. To piggyback off of what Dave was talking about is really the state agency training and the lead up training to a culminating event. So being able to bring those two sides of the house, the defend side of the house and the offensive cyber side of the house together and collaborate and share information on how they're able to do threat attribution. Key to the training piece here at the Georgia Cyber Center.
I can kind of just to give a little bit more those blue team environments, I want to say they're fully built out, 100% automated. So a full enterprise environment, full Active Directory, full Exchange, email working between teams. We had a full red on the red side. We had full use of public IPs, full use of DNS. So what we wanted to do was bring that extreme realism into the environment as well. So when the red team was attacking, they had 5 different countries they can come in from and pivot through to hit the blue teams. So what we really wanted to accomplish there, that agility and that flexibility, is get the most realistic range environment that you can possibly get and provide that value.
Thank you. So the GCC is one of a handful of places in the country that was engineered to create an ecosystem. And I know the word's overused, but I think it is so applicable here, where academia, industry, and government come together. And in that spirit, we're able to create MOUs and teaming agreements for partnerships. And if you think of that in the context of pursuing RFPs or grant-funded opportunities, we can facilitate major breakthroughs and discoveries that increase cyber awareness and mitigate threats. And so, Joseph, I imagine this is where training and workforce development play a pivotal role. Can you outline how training is creating a more competitive environment regarding workforce in the state and fostering economic development?
Sure. So really getting into leveraging the ecosystem here, we have that collective pool of knowledge set of government, academia, and private industry. And really what we're trying to do is lead the revolution for that cybersecurity and cyber workforce development locally, regionally, and even after the state efforts. With that, we use the training environments developed through the range team for capabilities to add valuable hands-on experiences, all at a convenient location here, tailored and customized for the government, academia, and private industry. So with that, our collaborative efforts are here aimed to provide harmony, transparency for better information sharing and to get government, academia, and private industry to adopt more so a culture of cybersecurity. With that, I'll pass that back to Rob.
Yep. So this allows us to move past dialogue and develop real solutions that impact shared cybersecurity challenges. As cyber threats evolve quickly, we want to anticipate the threats and not just react to them, developing core competencies that will be necessary. I mentioned earlier, Zach Hodges wasn't able to join us today, but the reason I thought it was important to include Zach is he had participated with us on a recent grant-funded opportunity that received national press. It was the Georgia AIM grant, Artificial Intelligence in Manufacturing, a $65 million effort. And the role of the GCC in that is to go out in rural and underserved communities and provide assessments and the subsequent training for rural manufacturing. These are frequently manufacturing entities that are running legacy equipment, and they simply don't know what they don't know. And so by partnering with one of our resident partners here at the Georgia Cyber Center, we have an entity that can come in, install an appliance in line that measures their vulnerabilities across 352 metrics. After that, we meet with leadership and design a training program and awareness initiative to bring that manufacturing facility up to speed. And so it's a multi-sector alliance across industry with state and local governments, higher ed, communities, startups, entrepreneurs, and nonprofits. It's also, this is a particular relevance because it's not just in this region of the state. This is across the state for economic development, and it allows the university system to work hand in hand with the technical college system to recruit, train, and deploy interns who will work side by side with subject matter experts to get after some of the toughest challenges in the state today. And I suppose I'll close out with some of the remarkable recent cyber attacks include SolarWinds, Microsoft Exchange vulnerability, the Colonial Pipeline, Kaseya, JBS, and Log4j. The scope, scale, and sophistication of these incidents continues to progress. But these are all big companies that we hear about in the news. The fact of the matter is 43% of all cyber attacks target small business. Of those businesses, 60% won't survive that attack. By the time I finish reading this sentence, a business will have fallen victim to a ransomware attack. That's the pace of instances we're dealing with today. Organizations impacted by cyber attacks have risen significantly as work has shifted to a more virtual environment. So it's not just government and national security systems being targeted, it's everyone, from private citizens to businesses and industry, academia, public sector services like hospitals and first responders, and government at all levels, local, tribal, state, and federal. So success in this era of strategic competition will rely on our collective ability to develop partnerships of all kinds that acknowledge the shared risks, the shared goals, and most importantly, shared solutions. And take a unified effort to gain and maintain a competitive advantage in the evolving cyber threat environment. And then one last item is, as we partner and collaborate, we're finalizing the stand-up of a consortium here at Augusta University and the Georgia Cyber Center, and there are 4 tenets to it. We look to engage and train the future workforce, increase cyber applied research and innovation, expand cyber-focused analytic partnerships, and enrich strategic cyber dialogue. And with that, I'll close and open for your questions.
Thank you. Question?
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I actually paid attention to the instructions the first time, so I have several questions from both groups there, but they're big quick ones.
Generational thing.
How many federal agencies investigate cyber crimes? Seems like every time I'm in a meeting, there's another entity that's investigating cyber crimes, but we don't have enough cyber crime experts. You talked about mission a little while ago. Have we established what the mission is for all these different entities so that we're using the assets that we have as much as we possibly can?
I completely agree with you. That is a great question. I think from the Secret Service standpoint, we are singularly focused on protecting the nation's financial infrastructure. So everybody knows us for protecting the president, vice president, foreign heads of state that are on U.S. soil. Absolutely, that is our number one focus. However, we are a dual mission agency. So when it touches something to do with the nation's financial infrastructure, which ransomware, BEC frauds, those are all areas that we are involved with. The reason why we've been able to leverage these partnerships like Army Cyber Command, the reason why I'm here and why I went out to Hawaii and started a position at INDOPACOM that replicates what I do, we are looking at areas of responsibility that we can use whole of government approach in order to attack this problem. No one agency is going to be able to take care of it. We just can't. No one agency is large enough. No one agency has enough specific authorities in order to do it. We've got to look at areas that we can come together. And I think right here, what is going on with the work that I'm doing at Army Cyber Command and NSA, with the relationships that we're building here with Georgia Bureau of Investigations and the Georgia Cyber Center, those are models. And the reason why, again, FBI has 14,000 agents, but even they can't control all of the cyber attacks that are happening day in and day out. If each of us stays within our lane and does what we're supposed to do and become effective at what we do, we're going to have a chance at solving this problem. But if we all just say, well, it's someone else's job, we're never going to win.
Okay. The Dr. Clark, what is your preferred, doctor or sergeant major?
Tom is fine, sir.
Okay, Sergeant Major. No, it's a habit I can't get out of. This is important. Which do you want more, the exit off 20 or the entrance to the back of Gordon?
The traffic patterns did dedicate or the I-20 exit because we already have it on the tip, sir. We worked with Don Grantham before he moved, and there is $3 million allocated from federal money to scope it, and then another $900K from state money. So the scoping for the actual interchange is in place. What we'll need help with is the connector. So once the interchange is built, and then that connector there's 3 or 4 proposed routes to go through Columbia County to get there. So we'll need some help with that. So if we only get one, then it would be that interchanging connector, sir, because of the traffic patterns that the people who are coming to the west side of Post.
I was kind of kidding, but I appreciate it. So we need more cyber people. We need more nurses. We need more CDL drivers. We need more teachers. We need more people is what it comes down to. The area that is a little bit of a challenge for us in the state for hiring people is in the more rural parts of the state. And you talked about TCSG, but there are college and career academies across the state too, where you can start engaging these people at a much younger age. Are we doing any outreach programs to the more rural parts of the state, especially with those career academies?
Yes.
Thank you. Good answer.
So we're working, the range specifically, we're working with the NSA on one, for example, that is targeted towards middle schools and high schools. It's still local in this region right now, but it's expanding. It's targeting middle school and high school students and trying to get them interested in cyber at a lower level in their education. There you go. Another one, we do Gen Cyber. We did a camp here this summer. In that one, it was focused on the K through 12 teachers and giving them some practical education on teaching certain technologies. This one happened to be cryptology, cryptography and stuff like that, to give them a better understanding of encryption and encoding and decoding. You got another one off the top of your head?
Yeah, so really that event was a train the trainer scenario. So it gave us an opportunity to really walk the dog for lack of better terms, for a teacher, how to tie a cybersecurity pathway to a state standard, and then show them how we can implement solutions like with the range team, a fun and engaging way for students to be interested.
Yes, sir. And the Alliance is a 2-state, 7-county. It's actually our MSA. So we have Cyber Patriot kids in Lincolnton and Jefferson, and we're working with the school system now to make a cyber citizen curriculum so that cyber is infused throughout the school system, whether it's, tractors now come with cyber elements to them, refrigerators and everything else. So, and even music. So if we can infuse the training at every grade level, we believe that will make a difference, sir. Yes, and also the Alliance for Cyber Education and a lot of partners, there is a Georgia pathway for cyber. So 9th graders take Introduction to Cybersecurity, 9th graders take Introduction to IT, 10th graders take Introduction to Cybersecurity, and 11th graders take Advanced Cybersecurity. So just like they have carpentry, welding, English, you can now take cyber in our high schools in Georgia.
That the senator here kind of voiced what I was thinking about back in my mind. I appreciate and respect what y'all are doing. I just got to make sure that we're expanding the program enough that it's covering more of the schools. So there's 180 school systems across the state. I'd be willing to bet not every one of them has that program because they don't have the availability of the equipment or the instruction to do that. But there's a cyber is not going to become less important in the future. It's going to continue to become more important. And how do we provide the opportunities? I'm brainstorming right here while I'm talking to you or kind of at you. How do we become more efficient at all areas of the state and educating this next group that we need?
Our challenge sometimes is the teacher themselves, sir. We are blessed to have Fort Gordon in our backyard, and our 10-year-olds get coached by someone who's on a cyber protection team. So we're getting the very best coaches for our children here. So we are blessed again to have Fort Gordon as our neighbor, sir.
Thank you.
I'll just add a little something to that too. We also have train the trainer opportunities. So we have a grant that is provided that we could get after curriculum for teachers, and then also train the trainer scenarios where we can teach those teachers to teach students.
Thank you. Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
To follow up on Senator Dugan's point, maybe we all can work together, is how many of the 180 have a cyber program? How many of the high schools have a cyber program, and how many of the actual work offline and pull that data together and go through that exercise? Senator Dugan's going down a pathway that I think warrants further exploration. Y'all got anything else?
I have a question, Senator Rhett. Doc,
Hey,
can
Senator,
you hear me?
Yes, sir.
Oh, I'm doing fine. I'm trying to be in 3 places at one time, but I'm doing fine. But I just have a quick question. I just want to know, is there any way to measure the effectiveness of this training and awareness as we progress forward? Because I remember when I was in the Air Force, we made a massive push on cybersecurity training, and it had a huge impact because, as you know, it would have an impact on the mission. So I was just curious, was there any way to measure the effectiveness? And, oh, by the way, Majority Leader Dugan, you don't have to call me Master Sergeant, Rhett. You can call me Doc.
So I can answer to that a little bit. So the thing about cybersecurity training is it's a continual moving target. As we train for a specific certification or we align to a specific set of training, within 6 months to a year, that's already changed. So really at a state level, we need to figure out how to have those groups meet on a continual basis and not just a 3-year rotation.
Thank you. Appreciate it.
Absolutely.
Thank you. All right, I'm going to move the agenda around a little bit. Tim Kashiba. Let you go next. Arizona, running a little bit behind. Arizona. And Senator Albers is getting hungry. I know I am. Yeah, if y'all need to take a break, step out, whatever. Casual setting. Gotta do. But we're gonna keep going. But we're gonna hear from Tim next. And Tim, I'm gonna let you introduce yourself, give your background, and you have a pretty fascinating story. So look forward to hearing this group hearing it.
Drop something. Thank you, Senator. Yeah, so I'm going to go a little bit about myself. I don't obviously nobody really likes talking about themselves, but it'll become important as you understand some of the points I'll make as to where I'm coming from. So again, my name is Timothy Kasib. I'm currently running an organization called Bracket F, a small organization that's part of a company called Redacted. I'm based here in Evans, Georgia. We're a fully remote company around the world. And right now we're focused on a lot of the public sector markets. And so I actually came about this opportunity while attending RSA earlier this year, the security conference in San Francisco, and Georgia was the only state in the nation that actually had a huge booth. So came across some folks in Georgia and was introduced to Senator Anna Vitarte, and we've since talked. And so I'm happy to talk a little bit about my background as to where I'm coming from, because I touch on a lot of conversations that happened over here in my previous life. So I recently retired from NSA here in Georgia in December of 2021. I've just had a storied career, a phenomenal background, and just privileged opportunities throughout my federal service since graduating from college. So as I mentioned, retired here as a deputy commander of NSA Georgia in December of 21. Prior to that, when I was going to retire, because this job will kill you, was the chief of NSA's tailored access operations at Fort Meade. Again, that's just thousands of hackers that work on behalf of NSA and the federal government, sort of go after our adversaries that were mentioned earlier. Prior to that, I actually served in Australia for 3 years, running the U.S. liaison office for NSA. Had an awesome opportunity there working with the Australians and actually many of the Five Eyes countries. And then after I came back, actually worked at the NSA's Commercial Solutions Center, which was essentially working a lot with private industry doing liaison. Before transitioning to NSA in 2006, I worked for the FBI's CART program and ran a digital forensics laboratory for 12 years. I started my career, like was mentioned earlier, with some folks working in computer forensics. And then prior to that, worked for NCIS when it was actually NIS, pre-Tailhook. And then once Tailhook happened, it became NCIS. So fond career looking back. Got my education in Maryland and DC. The FBI sent me to school for forensic science. So great opportunity to marry the two and where we are today. So looking back at all these different opportunities was early on when we couldn't even say offensive cyber was where I came from, working a lot of policy at the White House and trying to figure out how we were going to actually, as a federal government, approach the problems of some of which we're talking about today. And part of the reason why I did decide to retire is
the state of public-private partnerships and where we are today is fascinating. And the momentum that we've talked about a little bit this morning already is just amazing to me that we're making progress in this public-private space. So I'm just privileged to have the opportunity to sort of work with a lot of different federal organizations as well as state organizations, local organizations, and we'll talk a little bit about what's going on locally. Not really sure. Am I pointing this at something? Not moving. On a That's the right slide. Oh, it is working now. There you go. Thank you. So I was asked to actually talk a little bit from my perspective, certainly as a global cyber workforce problem. I remember years ago when I started in federal government, boy, we couldn't find anyone that wanted to get into this field of cyber forensics. It was, especially in the Bureau, it was like kicking and screaming. People wanted to be a part of it. They didn't really want to be a part of it. They saw it as a career-ending sort of area to be in, especially in the Bureau when, you know, it's a lot more fun to go out locking up people and bang down doors. So, but we saw the growth, obviously, of technology and the impact it was going to have later, especially in the Bureau. So being one of the first 10 folks in the CART program and building that program to what it is today, in excess of over 600 forensic examiners inside the Bureau, and looking back on that, was just fascinating experience to sort of say what we need to do or sort of focus on today. These are just some relative good numbers. Jason asked me to sort of talk about recent numbers. A lot of these are just in the last couple of months or as early as, or just as late as yesterday that some of these studies that just came out. So I was able to put some of this together this week and highlight some of these numbers, some of which we actually talked about earlier today. So recent reporting continues to show how critical the cybersecurity workforce is globally. Obviously, 4.7 million people with 3.4 million still required to keep up with the demand in cybersecurity workforce. Last year, it was 2.72 million. Most companies and organizations have formed teams of people due to the pace of the updates and the threats and the threat landscape that exists today, but also certainly the regulations that are coming forward. Our company works a lot with hospitals, and as you've seen, the hospital workspace is just getting hammered with ransomware today. And we're part of the National Ransomware Task Force to sort of share information on how that's being impacted. Hospitals are just being decimated by some of these ransomware attacks, and lives are being lost simply because ransomware actors are allowed to redirect ambulances and take down hospitals where elective surgeries or necessary surgeries can't even happen. So that global workforce gap has increased over 25% just in the last year. And I'll go through some of these. And some of these slides you'll actually see again, because I really want to get to the solution space. But what I wanted to do is just talk a little bit about the actual problem that exists. So if we look at a national level, obviously, I used to work with Chris Inglis. He is the National Cyber Director today, and Jen Easterly, who is in charge of CISA. So just phenomenal talent there at the national level, and trying to focus the efforts of this administration and hopefully future administrations and past administrations on being able to actually tackle this problem. Increased diversity efforts currently right now to fill the national shortage is estimated to be at 714,000 positions, which was actually mentioned a little bit earlier. So what that means is huge focus, certainly when I was running NSA Georgia here, huge focus on getting into the schools and getting more females and minorities involved in cybersecurity. We didn't see a lot in that pipeline 10 years ago. You know, a lot of folks look like me that were coming up in the education system that were focused on computer science or any of those areas. So there's a huge push at the federal level now, but also in many other areas when it comes to DEI initiatives, but trying to get at those HBCU colleges, increase to what you were saying, Senator Dugan, about the availability of some of these programs in rural America. We're not seeing that, and there is a focus at the federal level, but I see it at many other state levels to sort of do that. And obviously, as a company, we're all competing, trying to get some of those folks. So essentially, why the urgency? We touched on it today, and I won't read this, but in the information security field, 70% of the respondents of this recent survey, and I've highlighted all the sources on here, said that the organizations do not have enough cybersecurity employees. Most said their organization was at a moderate to extreme risk of a cyber attack. And obviously, we're seeing a lot of that today with the cyber attacks that are happening. And I'm going to bring this slide back up because I'm going to bring it back into the solution space as well. But I just want to highlight that and some other numbers that are there. So what skills are needed? This is a recent study that was just published yesterday. And I wanted to include this because these are some of the skills that are necessary that are highlighted in this survey that was done by Ithaca and published in the Wall Street Journal yesterday. Flexibility. A lot of folks obviously looking for flexibility, working remotely from home, and flexible hours. This is a global problem. So you're attacking it globally, time zone differences, things like that. You got to have some flexibility. Leadership. I saw this in the federal government, certainly see it across employers today. Folks want to feel empowered. They want to work for strong leaders, people that have backgrounds and are strategic thinkers, people that are looking over the hill, what's coming next, all at the speed of cyber. Critical thinking skills, being able to work under stress. That's a big factor that deals with the cybersecurity field today. Obviously, a company gets hit and they have a team that's actually focused on a cybersecurity event. It's generally not the C-suite that's gonna lose somebody or get fired, right? It's usually that team, and that's the stress they're under, that if their company is impacted by a cyber event, somebody's gonna obviously pay for it, and it's usually those people. It's not the board members, it's not gonna be the C-suite members that are ultimately going to pay the price. They could eventually, because I recently was asked a question in a podcast, you know, should board members be held responsible? Well, there's responsibility and accountability, and the board members are the ones that are actually providing the level of money that allows to augment their ability to augment their capabilities and training. Problem solving, certainly thinking on your feet, all at the speed of cyber. The ability to listen and speak. Folks, again, want to be empowered, but good listeners as a leader. Folks are what their challenges are. They want to engage their leadership in their company, and they want to have a manager that actually listen to them. And another thing that's often not talked about, but I see it more and more talked about, is mentoring and internal training. People. I spend a lot of time talking to my former NSA colleagues and even FBI colleagues, and I'm actually convincing them to try and stay and not leave, which is kind of weird. But a lot of them are too young to get out. They want to get out because they want to chase that money. And it's a very lucrative business to be out in private industry, and you can make a lot more money than public service often pays. But there's some benefits, especially in the training, especially in the leadership opportunities on the federal side. And so trying to get folks to actually stay in government is something I've been focused on to at least a point where, and I often say this to them, you're too young to get out. You need to stay in and learn more and give back. And that's still is ongoing on a regular basis for me. So again, trying to talk a little bit about the impacts in the solution space, and we mentioned some of it here, but as was mentioned in that previous slide, and then certainly in this recent report that talked about the White House efforts, there's significant opportunity that exists today with all these different jobs that are being advertised for, and certainly how we can refine our training to be able to do that in the future. There's so many folks that are involved in how to actually get that done. But the current activity and the ransomware attacks is just highlighting that. Cybersecurity is on the global stage today. Obviously, the ability to increase the diversity, sort of focus ourselves on minorities and women and bring people into this. It can be a very technical field, obviously, and trying to get folks really interested in that. We've talked a little bit and touched a little bit on the K through 12 programs and getting it early on. Certainly the cyber camps, Cyber Patriot, Gen Cyber, all those different things. I know the federal government is really focused on that. Certainly NSA is, and a lot of partnerships going on across the country to be able to grow those programs.
Jim, real quick before you
Please.
go next slide. Senator Alberts had just a question on that one slide.
Thank you. Very informative and incredible background. I'm feeling I need to go back to school right now and get a little more experience. Talking about the need for professionals in the space. In meeting yesterday, I did with some of our friends here at the GBI and the Secret Service, obviously holding on to folks, as you mentioned and alluded to, who are chasing the dollars. And I can't argue someone who might get a, 50, 100 or 200% pay increase that helps out them and their family. But we also talked about a few minutes ago that our majority leader mentioned that we also have a challenge with getting the instructors and the mentors, the folks that are in school to do the very programs we need to get them excited. Are you aware, or if not, do you think this would be a viable solution that we can take folks who are in those positions today, allow them to earn some extra income to be able to act as those mentors and maybe even teach a class if they, if they spent 90 minutes during their business hour days to do that, like many people who have an extra job in today's day and environment, it would incent them to stay in their current position, hopefully in their government agency, at the same time, be those mentors and instructors in the areas that we need them. And maybe this becomes a self-fulfilling prophecy.
Absolutely. I can tell you from personal experience, even when I was running TAO and it was my second opportunity to be in TAO, I was teaching at Hopkins for 7 years in the evenings, and I would race out of Fort Meade and run over to one of the campuses, Johns Hopkins. I would make those students stay there for 3.5 years, a lot of them, or I'm sorry, 3.5 hours, because I knew what they were paying for tuition. And so for me, it's just been a passion to give back. And having had the opportunities I've had, definitely getting involved in the K through 12 programs. I think there's a lot of folks that do want to give back, especially folks that have had careers like mine in federal government. And I'll close and talk a little bit at the end about what an amazing place Georgia is. I've been all over, obviously, in many different places that I won't even talk about, but there is so much here in this local area and in this state. The resources are just immense compared to many others. And it could really, truly be a model here. There's so much opportunity to grow from here foundationally. But yes, I absolutely do believe it could be an option. Most people don't do it for money. To be honest, every time I did try to leave Johns Hopkins because the hours were just getting crazy, they give you more money. And of course, my wife is like, yeah, you can teach another semester. One more semester. It's always one more. But yes, no, it's definitely a viable opportunity. Again, trying to finish up here with some positive news. But as I said in the earlier slide, 72% also feel that their cybersecurity staff is going to be increased and will increase over the next 12 months. And we've seen the workforce grow by 11%, or 464,000 positions just in the last year, which is a huge increase. So we obviously see people and companies investing, even private industry. I've engaged folks here getting out of the federal government. I didn't know a whole lot about how state and local governments work. So I engaged a lot of folks here in the local Columbia County area. I've worked with the school board president here in Columbia County. And just at a very small level, trying to understand, at my point, how I can actually give back in a small way. So hopefully more and more folks are doing that. And at my company, I work with a lot of former NSA, FBI, and three-letter agency folks that really do feel that way. So that's a great question about as far as giving back. The public-private partnerships piece is just huge, and we've talked about it today at the federal level. As far as solution space, especially with what we have here locally here in Augusta, but also throughout Georgia. North Georgia, University of North Georgia has won the hackathons that NSA sponsors 3 years in a row now. It's fascinating to see the talent that sort of comes out of the universities here in Georgia. So foundationally, there's just so much to draw from. And there could be, especially in the collaboration centers that are happening at the federal level, you talk about portals and information sharings and things like that. Obviously, a lot of companies are invested in communities throughout this country. And I think Georgia could be a model for how we could actually have a collaboration just within the state. 159 counties in this state. And I know Senator Dugan brought up about the rural areas. As I sit there and talk to, I came up with an example. I said, what if I wanted to register my car in some backwoods county here in Georgia? Where would I go to actually do that? And it's probably, as I was told, at least here in Columbia County, it's probably going to be some burned out school building that has one terminal that's going to allow you. I don't know this to be true or not true. It's just what I was told. Well, if I'm an adversary, right, if I want to get after the state of Georgia, what am I going after? I'm going to go after that low hanging fruit, as was mentioned earlier. I'm going to go after those areas that really aren't protected, that probably haven't had the visibility into cyber attacks or even the cybersecurity advisories that are put out by NSA and DHS and the FBI. So absolutely, there's a threat landscape here across the state, but there's also a tremendous amount of talent to protect it. And how we actually leverage that in the state is certainly an opportunity there that I think what you're focused on is just tremendous, and couldn't ask for anything more. So I'm happy to answer more questions. I certainly just want to thank Anna, the coordination of this and switching it from the first to the third ended up working out for me. So I'm glad it actually did. But I thank you, Senator Anna Vitarte, for inviting me here. And I certainly welcome more questions.
Thank you for being.
I just have one. It was what are some of the challenges as far as trying to attract more minority students, and any ideas about how to meet those challenges?
That's a great question. Some of it is often tuition. I see. There's a lot more scholarships out there. There's within, and I've been here 2.5 years, but everybody talks about the Hope Scholarship. None of my kids benefit from the Hope Scholarship, so I can't talk about it with any level of detail. But obviously, that's a tremendous opportunity for a lot of students to attend school if they're eligible for it. But oftentimes it's tuition. I hear their families just can't afford their ability to go to school, or their inability to understand what those opportunities are and how to pay for school. The federal government is focused on a lot of programs now to actually repay student loans if people are willing to do public service. And maybe there's a way in the state government to sort of attract people that way, but it's often financial. The other side of it could be it's just perceived to be too hard, right? So that goes back to the mentoring piece. You know, could I have somebody coach me through? Computer science is a hard area to get into. A lot of schools have standards, obviously, so it is seen as a difficult program, and self-doubt. They need a little mentoring and encouragement to actually say, wow, I can actually do this if I apply myself. Those are things that I would think of off the top of my head, at least as I engage students over my years.
Thank you, sir. Thank you. Unless there's other questions.
I have,
Oh,
this is Doc again, Senator Red. I have a commentary. I remember when I was in the Air Force, you talk about retention. It was quite a bit of a challenge to retain people once they got a certain level of training. That was when they went into the private market, was lucrative in terms of pay. I would always try and encourage them. I said, hey, once you get 10 years, you might as well do 20, because that next 10 to go by fast. Sometimes it worked, sometimes it didn't. But one of the things we did was, when it came to recruiting minorities, we beefed up our presence at a number of the colleges that were such as at the AU Center, Morehouse, et cetera, and kept a steady presence there, and that helped us somewhat. But I just want to commend you on your efforts in that area. I know how tough it is, and keep up the good work.
Thank you, Senator. Thanks for your service.
Yeah, I
Thank
think
you.
Senator Red, I'll give a shout out to, I know one of our other colleagues who's chairing the HBCU study committee. I know during Senator Halpern's meetings, there has been some discussion around what the HBCUs have been doing in the cyberspace. A couple of different meetings. So this conversation is kind of blended over to other Senate study committees we've seen over the last few weeks.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. It's it's really more of a statement than a question. What you said a second ago is why I was asking about the rural components of the state, because if I was a bad guy, I wouldn't go to the most sophisticated sites. I would go to the ones that were the least offended, but are still interconnected with the rest of the system and come through the back door that way. And I don't know anything about computers. I mean, I can't even use my iPhone with everything it's got on it. But that was why I was asking. That's one part of it. The second part was, and I love the Augusta area. I'm not saying anything bad about Augusta. So the senator don't, but we can't afford to have all of our eggs in Augusta.
Totally agree.
I need them spread out across the entire state. And there's a conversation I was having with the different committee yesterday that an area that's commonly referred to as the Black Belt in Georgia that goes from southwest up to about here across the whole middle width of the state is the part that is most economically challenged in the state. So I'm trying to figure out how we can promote those different programs and to a lot of minority potential students in the least healthy economic part of the state. So it's a win-win-win all the way across. Now, I know that the technical college system has the high demand career fields, and this is one of the high demand career fields. But if we're waiting until they get to college, I think we've waited too long. This is 8th, 9th grade stuff. So that was a rationale for my question on a while ago, other than the road thing. That was just a joke. But how do we promote education at a younger age and maintain the programs that we have to encourage more diverse workforce across the entire state?
And did I answer that earlier, or
Sure.
my thoughts on that? But look, I'm with you on the HBCU colleges, and we've been focused on that, at least in the federal government, because we saw this growing many years and the talent we needed across the federal government. A lot of partnerships amongst different federal agencies talking about the workforce. Obviously, Chris Inglis is very focused on this as a national cyber director, and how to actually do that better across the country. I think those conversations are going to continue. As a matter of fact, some of the recent legislation that was put out there, some of the feedback is due today. November 3rd is when they're closing that. And there'll be a lot of actual conversations going on across industry and governments on the respondents of those surveys that were put out by the National Cyber Director's Office. And I'm glad to see the conversations going on, but we were having the same challenges 10 years ago. And we just need to get better at it quicker. It's going to take money. It's going to take commitment. It's probably going to take incentives to get people to do it. If you ask me to go to a school or participate in a camp, I'm going to figure out a way to do it. Because it's just an opportunity to get back that makes you feel so much better for especially people in rural counties that just haven't had that chance. But I don't know how many of folks are out there, but I do know a lot of folks that are veterans of at least the federal government, and the opportunities they have, very focused on doing that.
So kind of piggyback off that, you may not know, but I mean, do we know, Georgia's the greatest, but what state has taken that to scale like most effectively? Does that even exist? Like this conversation we're describing, is there a model, or is that model just non-existent at the moment, you think?
I don't know that I know if there's any one state that does it better than another one. Certainly the federal government is very focused on states at many different levels when it comes to cyber. I don't know that I can answer with any definitive factual statement as far as one state being better. My perspective here locally, I can only second what was said earlier. The opportunities here locally that could affect Georgia as a whole because of the talent that's in this local area. And as Tom said, to have Fort Gordon, having been a part of the reason I moved here from Fort Meade was that move from Army Cyber to here that was thought to be, and that's a big deal. I mean, that was a huge deal. And to this day is still a huge deal. The Army is actually from the services, no doubt the Army is on the cyber side, definitely better than the other services, and they're playing catch up. But it's a good, healthy competition, and to have Army Cyber, a 3-star command here in our backyard, is just a treasure.
Mr. Chairman, can he say that again? Senator Redd, are you listening?
I certainly didn't say that to offend the senator that's online, but I will tell you, having had my experience, certainly 14 years in NSA, and having been involved with the move of Army Cyber here, the Army is really leading the way, no doubt. My dad was in the Navy, Senator, so I grew up a Navy brat, so I can understand, but the exposure I've had, no doubt, the Army is definitely further along and definitely a model to follow.
My dad was in the Army, so you can say it as many times as you want. Comment real quick.
Yeah, I was going to say one of the things I think is one of the biggest challenges when it comes to the education at the lower and middle school and high school, for example, or in K-12 in general, is access to the resources to teach in general, right? So the curriculum's out there. Everybody's got curriculum on everything cyber related, but you can't get the practical application of actually enforcing those skills to get them to get that interest in that excitement for the technology and things like that. And I say that to say, you know, a lot of these camps that we have are very, very heavy, meaning they've got these big VMs they carry around. The students can't put them on there. And that's not even just in rural counties. That's in all programs for any of these counties. The kids have a Chromebook. They can't do anything on it. The school policies don't allow you to put and install the tools that you need. You need a technology out there that's going to allow them to use it on that Chromebook or that, you know, whatever the case may be. So to kind of answer your question on a model that's out there that I think is close in that aspect, I would probably compare it to the Virginia Cyber Range. I don't know if you've heard of it yet, but the state funds that, and it provides the resources to all schools, K-12 through collegiate, I believe. Don't quote me on that, I guess. But I'm pretty sure it's funded, and none of those schools pay for any of those resources. It's for the entire state. So they came up with a model that gave all the resources they needed to teach at all these places. Now you still have problems with things like broadband accessibility to internet and things like that in some of those counties. But I think that tackles one of the hardest parts of teaching cyber in rural counties.
Thank you. Thank you both. All right, we're going to move to the Palo Alto team. I don't know if y'all want to talk from back here, or do y'all want to move up here so we can? Okay. Right here is fine.
Yeah, we do. Thank you.
Oh, thanks for being here. And Danny, I'll let you introduce yourself and your team.
Sure, yeah. Hey, Senators, Danny DeVito here. I'm a district sales manager for Palo Alto. I'm glad we get to go after this one because all of that subject is really something that's really important to me. I'm really interested, especially in getting more women in technology and specifically cybersecurity. So thank you. And I agree 100% with what you said, Senator, about lower education. I think that is big missing component where we need to start to get more minorities and women in cyber. And I actually led a campaign within my company to rewrite job descriptions, because I think that is a big piece as well, taking off certain language like college degree requirements and things like that, because it is shown that women are less likely to apply for jobs if they don't meet every single criteria. So thank you. And that was a great segue to what we're going to talk about here.
First off, thank you very much for having us here, Senator, and the rest of the study committee. My name is Thomas McClellan. I head up government affairs and strategy for Palo Alto Networks. And so we were asked today on our prep call to provide you with some tactical suggestions on how you could bolster our cybersecurity workforce, how you could build out a Georgia cyber force. And so we've been looking across, what we're seeing nationally. So my AOR is I have the whole of US, so I have the opportunity to do this in many, many different states. And so I'm bringing not just the perspective of our company, but also just what I'm seeing around the country from a bigger perspective. So in terms of just a little background, if you want to advance the slides.
Yeah.
In terms of background, a little bit about our company. There we go. We are the world's leading cybersecurity provider. We are in the top 10 Fortune 500. I don't want to make a sales pitch for the company, but we have about 14,000 folks worldwide. We are in many of the big governments around the world. Here in the US, we protect many of the most sensitive and classified systems that are out there. And we provide this just so you can understand the advice that we're going to give, just to provide some context. And I know Danny wants to make a comment as well.
Yeah. And proud to be the security partner of 95% of the Fortune 100, including the big companies here in Atlanta. So, and also, not just our customer base, but I think third-party ratings are really important as well. I'm sure everyone's heard of Gartner. MITRE is also a really important one when you're looking at cybersecurity vendors to partner with. MITRE is a non-biased nonprofit that really, instead of just doing vendor surveys, they actually do real world attacks and test different vendors' products and kind of measure how different products respond. So I think MITRE is a really kind of key place to look for when you're looking for a cybersecurity partner analyst. What I did. All right. Okay. Oh, there we go. So 25,000 open jobs in Georgia right now. So we've talked a lot about the workforce challenges. So 25,000 open jobs, about 1,500 of those are in public sector. I think I looked, I pulled this last night, pulled these numbers a month ago, but last night I checked again and it's pretty much the same. So 25,000 open jobs in Georgia. And there's been a lot of conversation about how do we get more people in cyber? I think that's a really big piece of the equation. There is another piece of the equation that we haven't talked about yet. And that is how do we make sure those are really good cyber jobs, right? So what if those 25,000 jobs, what if we could, for all of our cyber people, for every person that we bring into the cybersecurity industry, arm them so they can do the job of 2 or 3 people, right? I really like the analogy. Who's the best superhero? Anybody? Iron Man, yes, exactly, or Batman. But Iron Man is the exact answer I was looking for because he's just a normal guy, right? He's just a guy with really good technology. So I like to think of the cyber jobs of the future and the cyber workforce of the future. You're just a human, a normal human, but you're wearing really good technology and it makes you more efficient at your job. So if you're using the right technology and the latest and greatest in cyber, then we can make every cyber person do more efficient work. And that is the second half of the equation of how we tackle that 25,000 number right there in Georgia.
feel like the straight man in this presentation. So in terms of Palo Alto, and before we kind of get into our more technical stuff, we are a values-driven company. And we really, as they say, drink your own bourbon. We invest a lot of time and capital and resources into growing the next generation of cyber workforce. And so there's some real teeth in here. And so we've got a couple of different programs that we're just going to talk very briefly about. And I'll let Danny talk about this one right here.
Oh, yeah. So we have a few programs, hopefully we've talked to you guys about. If not, we need to. CyberStars, VetsNet, we're just doing a lot other than kind of, our corporate, product building and things like that. So making sure to, again, piggyback off what you were saying is getting more minorities, getting more women into cyber. So we do kind of put our money where our mouth is and invest in scholarships, invest in training. And we have, train the trainer for things like cyber aces, where we do have the curriculum that we can get into those lower education, K-12s, and we can train teachers on how to, teach cyber hygiene for younger students, which I think is a really big piece. Even if they don't end up in a career in cybersecurity, it's really important for our kids to know about cyber hygiene because their data is out there. They're getting on social media and getting on the internet so much younger than we all did. So the curriculum piece, I think, is really, really important.
And want to call out here, one of the things that we also provide, the first year we've done this, we've done 14 scholarships to HCBUs. And so we are really committing significant resources. And those cyber scholars are also married up with mentors internal to Palo Alto. So it's not just, here's some cash to help you get to school, but here's some cash and people in the business that can help you do this. And Danny was just talking briefly about getting into, different levels of education. We also host what's called our Palo Alto Networks Academy. This is curricula that we provide, and you were mentioning the lack of access to resources for training. We don't do the training, but we do provide. This is a qualified training curricula, and that's a list of some of the institutions and organizations that we actually support here in Georgia, including Fort Gordon. So last kind of slide really to talk about where we fit. So we have a number, there was an information sharing panel earlier today. We are integral to a number of different partnership organizations, both nationally and internationally at the federal level. Workforce obviously has been a big discussion today. We were just at the White House yesterday and the day before for a summit focused specifically around a workforce development issue. But again, we want to just say, here's where we fit. And this is why our comments, why we think our comments are valuable. Did you have a question, sir?
Nope. I do. Thank you. Getting back to the area of education, and thank you for bringing up the slide about the colleges. And I know we've had some discussion. I think it's critically important. And I think that's a whole area we need to continue to focus on. But one of the areas that I think we have to make sure we identify is kids are typically deciding what they're going to do in middle school. And if we wait until college to offer whatever incentive, in most cases, it is too late. They've already decided what type of a path or what type of area they want to go to. So have you done anything in particular with getting to that age group to motivate those students to understand that this is the type of career they'd want to be a part of, it's viable, it's exciting, and it's all those other things? I always use the example that if you get a degree in Scandinavian art history, that's great, but there's only one job when the teacher retires. Please tell me if you guys have done anything on the lower end of the spectrum as far as kids.
The answer is yes in North Dakota, but I know you want to talk about it. Oh, yeah. So we work very closely with the state of North Dakota and recently hosted earlier this year a cyber competition for K-12. And it apparently went, I was not there on ground, but it went apparently very, very well, getting the kids excited, getting them into the notion of a competition, that it's fun to compete just like a basketball game. And that was the analogy being used out there. The governor was involved, the CIO, the CISO, The tag was also involved out there as well. So we do sponsor things like that as well.
And I mentioned our Cyber Aces program. So we actually do have curriculum for K-12, and we do have a way where, you know, Palo Alto, people from our company can train teachers on how to deliver that curriculum for lower education.
So we are not going to dwell a lot of time on the threats. We all can agree with geopolitical events being what they are, with the adversaries getting more and more sophisticated, better resourced. You know, threats are growing. The cost of ransomware payouts continue to grow. Attacks against SCADA, against IoT systems continue to grow. So lots of bad things happen. So what we did want to talk about and begin to focus, I think the meat of our presentation is really about what you as policymakers, what are some of the challenges you should be thinking about, and what are some potential opportunities. So one of the biggest challenges that, and again, I spent about 20 years working with the National Governors Association in Washington, D.C. So I've worked literally with every single state, Commonwealth and territory on cybersecurity and related homeland security emergency response issues. One of the biggest challenges one of the biggest challenges facing state and local governments is that there is not a coordinated, cogent, scalable strategy at the state level. And what's interesting, so with the release of that state local cybersecurity grant program, which is not a lot of dollars, what it is, it's a forcing function for states to begin to look at how do we begin to create this scalable cybersecurity ecosystem that cuts across levels of government, that allows the maximization of scale of scarce resources, in particular around workforce. The biggest challenges facing states is that you just cannot scale up with the appropriate number of workers. Second major challenge, I think, is that most, and particularly around government, state and local governments, and particularly at the local level, don't have a full, true understanding of what their risk looks like. They don't know what assets are outside their security stack. They don't know who their adversaries are. They don't know what IoT devices have been put on their networks that they may not be aware. They may not even know if they're conformant to some of the best practice and standards.
Yeah, and I think, you know, earlier today in the information sharing, we're talking about, you know, there's a lot of talk about kind of humans sharing information, right? But the cyber of today is more of a machine fight. So I remember in the first committee hearing, we heard from GTRI and a woman, Dr. Jessica Inman, who does a lot of research on artificial intelligence, AI, right? There's a lot of talk about AI and toasters and things like that. And AI, a really easy way to think about it and look at it is basically getting machines to work for you. Getting a machine, whether it's, you know, a car to drive for you, or a toaster, or playing against you in an online poker game. It's artificial intelligence is getting machines to work for you. And the bad guys are using these technologies. The bad guys are using automation, artificial intelligence to spray out attacks. So one of the things I heard this morning, there's a lot of talk about nation states. Just in the past couple of years, because of, you know, there's these macro technology trends that businesses are using, cloud, SaaS, the bad guys are using these too. So in the past couple of years, things like ransomware as a service and phishing as a service have created something where low-level attackers that weren't super sophisticated, they can buy ransomware as a service and spray out attacks. So that's one of the reasons we're seeing such an increase in attacks. And that's why, because they're using things like artificial intelligence, automation, we have to be using that too. We can't be slow to consume the latest and greatest in technology. We've got to create those superheroes, the Iron Man and the Batman in the SOC, in the Security Operations Center. So we need security innovations to be easier to consume in government. And this isn't like a pie in the sky idea. We also, on the last session, we heard from Southern Company, Curly, and Darren at Georgia Tech. These are, you know, some of our private sector and education partners that are actually doing this today, using artificial intelligence and automation in the SOC so that they can do more with less people. And so, you know, we have this nice picture here of the car cobbled together. A lot of state and local government customers are kind of cobbling cybersecurity together to look like this car, a lot of different, we've got somebody, a cloud person looking at cloud security. We've got a network person looking at network security, but no overall kind of security plan that really needs to come from the top and be driven down.
So what can you do and how can you respond? So looking at kind of 5 tactical suggestions for you all to take back. First is this notion of kind of understanding what the threats are. There's a couple ways to do that. One is you'll hear a term, the attacker's eye view, that notion of what does your attack surface look like? For example, Palo Alto, we have a tool that is widely deployed in some very sensitive networks. It's called Expanse. And what it does is it trolls across 98%, 99% of the entire known public facing internet. And it can look at your systems and say, hey, by the way, this is what the attackers see. You've got all these devices that are outside your network. You've got these misconfigured things. And we've done this for organizations, and I won't say what organization, but we asked them, how many IP addresses do you have? They said, well, we've got about 100 million. We did an Expanse assessment and it turned out to be 300 million. And so the notion in security is you cannot protect what you can't see. The other is this notion of, given the scarcity of workforce challenges, the scarcity of good qualified workers, they're your most valuable asset. And the challenge with what we're seeing today with the sophistication of attacks is that you can't throw people at what is ostensibly a software issue. And so the notion is you need technology that is good, that integrates across, and the notion of that car right there is a challenge when you begin to look at how different systems are cobbled together, that you need to be able to have a process in place, a platform they call it in the business, that actually kind of integrates and can automate pretty quickly. Sir, you have a question?
I do, and I'm sorry, it's a busy time of year, so I'm about to have to take off. But I saw the card, so you have been to Carrollton, Georgia. There was one thing that I saw, and when you were talking about teaching the younger kids to have as a game, Google was doing that in a Boys and Girls Club to the younger end, and the kids thought they were playing a game, and they were coding, is what they were doing. There's got to be a way, and there may already be a way that we're doing that with the younger generation to help with the cyber stuff.
You're absolutely right. And it's a lot of these gamers, people, the kids that are really into the video games that end up being really great at cyber. And, some of them in the K-12s, some of our K-12 customers, they're dealing with kids that are hacking their own school to, change the test scores or whatever it is. So, it's a matter of getting into those schools and getting in front of those kids to make sure they, end up on the good guy team. And it's as young as we can go, really, is really the point.
So 2 more things with this, and then we'll delve into just a few of these. IR is incident response, having incident response retainers. And so for example, we're actually working with a number of, thank you very much, Senator, for your time. We're actually working with a number of state and counties which are pre-positioning IR retainers so that when there is a breach, they know who to call and they've already got those assets committed. And that's actually something that is scalable. And the final notion, and we're not going to delve too deeply into this, is that 90% of the attacks actually come from misconfigured systems. And so not only are they misconfigured, they're also probably not turned on and used to their full capabilities. And so one of the things to look at is how you can begin to leverage the base of technologies that you've already got.
Yeah, and you just mentioned this, Thomas. So when we say IR, we mean incident response. And what that means is when an attack does happen, every second, literally every second is important. And so when an attack happens, you don't really have time to wait for procurement, especially if you're a government. You don't have time to wait for procurement. You don't have time to do research on what firm you should use to help you respond. It's really important to have an incident response retainer in place so you have someone to call immediately to try to slow the spread of the breach as quickly as possible. And this is what I was talking about with the kind of superhero analogy, right? So automation, the Ford factory line, very famous kind of business case study. The first car took 12 hours and 13 minutes. And then kind of the revolutionary technology, adding automation into that process allowed Ford to do 25 cars a day. Can you push this? So combining the automation to 25 cars a day with the artificial intelligence, remember, letting the machines do the work for you, that's how we get to 1 car per minute today in the US. So that is the analogy of what we need to do in our Security Operations Center, especially in government. We are doing this today, again, with the customers that we heard from in the last cyber committee hearing, and we are doing this at our own company. So right now, one of the problems we've identified is so many products in cybersecurity. This is another analogy. I really like analogies, guys. But has anybody ever had chicken coop? Okay, so I grew up with chickens, right? And we first get the chickens, and the first night the fox gets them. So what do? We have to bury the kind of fence underground so the fox can't crawl under. The next day, the hawk comes down and gets the chickens. It's really traumatic as a child, you guys. But then we have to build a fence on the top, right? So that's what's happening in cybersecurity. And that's why you get to the picture of the car earlier. The bad guys come up with a new way to get in, and we have to kind of reinforce that. The problem is it's creating so many alerts in the SOC. That's why we have to make our security people into superheroes. And we do that with really good technology. So 36 billion events. How does any person look at 36 billion? What if you got 36 billion emails today, or even 11 million emails today? You wouldn't be able to do that. You need a machine to help you sift through all of those emails. You have to embrace automation in the SOC. And that's how we really get people excited about cyber careers in government. We don't tell them, hey, you're gonna come graduate college and be buried in alerts. You're going to be a superhero, and you're going to have a lot of those alerts automated, so you know exactly what to look at. So you can do the cool things like the threat hunting and the red team, blue team exercises. And so we're doing this in our SOC today, going from 36 billion events down to 7 incidents that humans actually have to look at.
So, to put that into context, and then we'll take this home, so we're a company about 14,000 folks. We protect the biggest networks in the world. Our Security Operations Center works 9 to 5. We've got 9 folks who have been there. I think we've had no turnover in 4 or 5 years, because they get the chance to do what they want to do and actually work those 7 incidents and begin to track the bad guys down. And so what that could mean for you in your development of a cyber force is that you can create these JSOCs, and we're seeing this trend around the country, Joint Security Operations Centers, where it supports local governments, it supports the state governments, it's scalable, it's extensible, it allows you to take your scarcest resources, which are always going to be people, put them in a context that uses automation, that uses machine learning, that uses artificial intelligence, and can automatically respond to many of these attacks that are taking place. But thank you very much for the time. We're happy to take any additional questions.
Thank you for being here, Sarah Jess.
I have one. One of the things I was looking at, are there any special challenges as far as like doing direct partnership, for lack of a better term, with HBCUs or trying to work with them more directly? Scholarships are great, but actually trying to be like with them on campus, so to speak.
Well, as I mentioned earlier, we do provide curricula for training, and that is actual hands-on practical experience where the students can actually come out with a certificate on how to use our technologies. So, for example, working with one state, and they can come out. I'm going to get the metric wrong, but it's like $60,000 as a base salary. We can help in other ways. We can come out and do speaking engagements. We can do things like that. But I think that whole notion of the academy program and our mentoring are two very good examples of how we can help do that.
I think maybe an issue could be as far as government is related and just maybe just removing some bureaucracy and getting the curriculum in schools. My engineer here, Nick, used to work at be an adjunct professor at Chattahoochee Tech. And I know when we're trying to talk about cyber curriculum, actually getting it to where it's actually being taught in schools is a very long process. And because of that kind of evolution of, the predator-prey relationship, because cyber is evolving so quickly, by the time you get the curriculum in the school, the technology may have changed. So I think that would be the big issue in the curriculum in schools is by the time we get through the bureaucracy to get it there, the technology may have changed.
Especially the last part of what y'all were saying, kind of goes back to what I think Jeff was saying earlier, and we talk about, you were using the chicken example, and to take that example, and if everybody's in a silo and all these things are happening at one place, how are we coordinating efforts to have a real response or proactively trying to stop a response? And I think, I think that the thought amongst, many of the senators is, if we create a cyber force in Georgia, how do we try to start eliminating those situations?
Bureaucracies, right? Yeah, and it's technology moves quickly anyways. But when you have that kind of predator prey thing happening, it's going to move even faster. So we have to be agile. We have to, act like a business, like the private sector, and be able to consume innovations quickly.
Thanks
Thank
for
you very
being
much.
here.
Appreciate it.
Thanks.
No, thank you. We're going to move.
I have one comment,
Oh,
Senator
good.
Red again. I was just going to say, when you were talking about chickens, I remember being on the farm and watching my grandparents wring those chickens' necks. But I also remember years ago, I used to teach computer programming. I'm going to date myself. I used to teach BASIC and Fortran. And then I remember in the Air Force, they talked about bringing technology, computer technology into the military, and I laughed. But by the time I retired, computers were doing everything, and cybersecurity was the top topic. So I just want to commend you all on your efforts and keep up the good work.
Thank you, sir.
Thank you. You too.
Thank you. So we're going to move to Mr. Ryan Murray's the Deputy Director and Deputy State CIO or CISO for the state of Arizona. Ryan, you on the call?
Good afternoon, Senators. Yes, I am.
How are you? Well, thank you for joining us from Arizona. We actually got to see your governor yesterday, so that was kind of interesting.
Awesome.
But thank you for coming and giving us your perspective from the state of Arizona and some of the best practices that you've been working on.
Yeah, for sure. And if you don't mind, I'll share my screen and just kind of run quickly through a slide deck I've got.
Yeah, thank you.
And let me know when it's coming through.
Yeah, we can see it.
Perfect. So just to start out, I know, Senators, you are speaking now on the potential formation of a cybersecurity force. We've done something similar here in the state of Arizona. And thank you so much for inviting me to come speak with you today to kind of talk about the history of our program and where it's gone over the past few years. So by executive order, Governor Ducey formed what he called the Arizona Cybersecurity Team, or ACT, back in 2018. Essentially a cross-organizational team represented by government, private sector, law enforcement, nonprofit organizations, education entities, to try to come together to really identify where the gaps in cybersecurity across government, across private sector were in the state of Arizona. And they finalized their recommendations towards the end of 2018. Essentially, these 7 bullet points. Looking at improving information sharing for public and private sector collaboration, the speed of that information sharing, enhance our incident response capabilities across the state, protect our cybersecurity infrastructure to protect our citizens and our consumers, to create a unified state brand for cyber. So there's one-stop shop for everyone to go to get cyber information, and create a call to action to enhance our cyber safety for K-12. And then additionally extend opportunities to support the cyber talent pipeline. All of these things are very familiar, I would imagine, since everyone who's talked this morning and this afternoon said very, very similar things. So it sounds like you guys are on the right direction based on what we found. So what did that actually drive for our cyber strategy after that report came out? This is something that my boss, Director Romer, and the state CISO has put together that is really sort of pulling all of those things together in a really boiled down version. We've called it the 5 C's of cybersecurity in state of Arizona, and the things that we've really wanted to focus on building to enhance those cybersecurity protections and capabilities. So driving that culture, really understanding what cybersecurity looks like across the state, building collaboration and communication, because we can't do this alone. We need to work with each other to make it happen, both at the state level, the local level, and with our national partners. And then driving convictions, because frankly, we're playing whack-a-mole with these cyber criminals, and we want to be able to put them behind bars in one way or another. So working with our law enforcement entities, both at the local level and the national level, to try to give them the best information to go after these criminals and bring them to justice. And then consistency sort of brings it all together. So doing all of these 4 things consistently is the only way that any of this is going to work over the long term. So what does that look like here in the state of Arizona? We've put together what we've called the whole of state approach, which is something that you've probably heard sort of across the nation. This is something that's starting to be talked about more and more. And we've realistically got 4 pillars of our whole of state cybersecurity approach. On the left here, you'll see Arizona Cyber Command, which is our team within the Arizona Department of Homeland Security. Something very unique in Arizona that I believe only one other state is doing is our enterprise cybersecurity team reports up through our Department of Homeland Security, not through our IT department or enterprise technology group. This is something that Governor Ducey was very passionate about this year and essentially said that, look, cybersecurity is Homeland Security. This is no longer just an IT issue. This is something we need to be looking at a bigger holistic picture about how does this impact critical infrastructure? How does this impact private sector? How does this impact our education sector? We can't just have this buried in an IT department. So that was something that was we moved underneath the Department of Homeland Security last year and was made official in legislation this year, and is sort of driving where we're having that strategic conversation now with our state CISO being a director level position as well as a cabinet level position within the governor's administration, elevating that mission and that conversation. The second pillar here is what we've called AZ-ISAC, the Arizona Information Sharing and Analysis Center. I know others have mentioned the MS-ISAC, very similar model, but focused on Arizona and how we're pulling together the community across the entire state with our state agencies, our local government entities, our school districts, our tribal nations, all coming together to share threat information and cyber best practices with each other. And then the third pillar here is our integration with our Department of Emergency Management and Military Affairs, more specifically our National Guard Cyber Joint Task Force. They are utilized within the state as both a preparedness and assessment capability, as well as an incident response capability. So anytime any of our state agencies, our local governments, or even our critical infrastructure partners in the private sector, if they have a really bad day on the cyber side of things, the National Guard team can be deployed to assist with any of them in coordination with our team to provide some of those response and remediation efforts. And then the fourth that we're really proud of that has really taken off this year with some significant support from our governor is what we're calling the statewide cyber readiness grant program. Essentially, this is devoting state dollars to provide cyber protections to our local government entities at no cost to them. So with that being said, I'll just kind of run really quickly through some additional details here. So Department of Homeland Security Cyber Command, as mentioned, is our team, a state agency, no affiliation with the U.S. Department of Homeland Security other than partnerships. But I know other state agencies have a Homeland Security division or department that really focuses entirely on federal grant programs. And that's historically what our department has been. And with our move over a year and a half ago, we've really taken on that cyber operational focused mission and elevated that mission of our department. So we run the statewide security operations center. You heard Palo Alto talk about this sort of SOC concept previously. We're really driving that idea here at the state of Arizona, having that central location where all of our government entities can report security incidents and we can respond to them as effectively as possible. We also drive by statute statewide security and privacy policies and standards that all state agencies are required to adhere to and ensure compliance with those. We're also managing all of the enterprise cybersecurity tools provided for our state agencies and our local government entities. So looking at the AZ ISAC, we again provide that statewide operational perspective. We're bringing in threat information from all of our local governments, from all of our state agencies, aggregating that and then sharing it back out with all of our partners, both on the public sector side and the private sector side, which I'll speak to a little bit later in the presentation. We also, literally, our team is sitting within our Fusion Center, which is the Arizona Counterterrorism and Information Center, which was established shortly after 9/11, as most Fusion Centers were, to combat counterterrorism or to combat the terrorist threat across the nation. And realistically, our Fusion Center has grown to be a multi-domain, all hazards, all threat Fusion Center across the state. And cyber now being a major component of that threat domain. Our team is sitting within the Fusion Center, providing that critical capability to share information with our law enforcement and federal partners. We're also utilizing an automatic information sharing platform called MISP to share threat information with all of our partners across the state, as well as some of our other state partners in other states. We utilize a communication platform called Slack, so we can do real-time chats with all of our local partners and state agencies. Without having to rely on Google or Office 365. Obviously, all of our partners have sort of their own collaborative platforms. We wanted to have something that stood outside of that, so there wasn't any competition or confusion. We also do monthly threat briefings and newsletters coordinated with FBI, InfraGard, and our CISA partners. We have our DEMA Cyber Joint Task Force, as mentioned, sitting again in the same location in our Fusion Center, working closely with our team, and then additional collaboration with our federal partners. So we have representatives from CISA, from DHS, Intelligence and Analysis, from TSA, from the Secret Service, and others sitting in our Fusion Center, literally down the hall from our team. So if we have issues or information that we need to share with each other, we can just walk down the hall and talk. So again, some additional details on our Cyber Joint Task Force. They're providing pen testing and vulnerability assessments on the preparedness side of things, looking for where the risk exists in both our state agencies and our local government entities. They're participating in those national and state training exercises to better, increase their capabilities so they can help support the state. As they are a National Guard contingent, they are keyed into the DoD and the National Guard Bureau on intelligence sharing, so they can correlate all of that across the whole of government. They also provide right of boom post-attack incident response capabilities and forensic analysis. So if a state agency or a local government does have a bad day, they can be deployed to help respond to that and determine just how bad it was, and then work with our team to do response and recovery efforts. They're also working on building out aptitude tests and skills training so we can help elevate all of our cyber professionals across the state, and then doing defensive cyber operations for our state government entities and protecting the governor's network, which is realistically their main mission. So all of that being said, as mentioned, we're all sitting together in the same location. This was our ribbon cutting ceremony on the Cyber Command Center last October. You've got our director of our Department of Administration, our director of our public safety, our governor, our adjutant general, and my boss, director of Homeland Security here on the left, and all of our partners essentially sitting in one location so we can fuse that cyber threat information across the entire state and then better share that with all of our partners. This is something that I believe is starting to pop up across the nation, but was really unique several years ago, where we didn't have that central repository for cyber professionals to sit in the same room, to talk to each other, and be able to collaborate real time about the threats across the state. So just diving in a little bit more on the cyber readiness program, we're currently providing 5 services to all of our local governments and K-12 school districts. This started out historically about 4 years ago, utilizing some Homeland Security grant funding to start providing cybersecurity capabilities to local governments. Something not entirely unique. I believe a lot of states are utilizing Homeland Security grant funds to provide cyber capabilities. What we did differently was essentially we manage these capabilities for the local governments. Instead of providing them funds, instead of supporting them through smaller local projects, we essentially had those governments MOU the funds back to the state to better support economies of scale, better support purchasing, and better support visibility and capability across the entire state for these systems. We've recently added advanced endpoint protection, multi-factor authentication, web application firewalling to protect all of our front internet-facing applications that our citizens use. We've added converged endpoint management, which is essentially a fancy way of saying all those other things you do with your desktops and workstations and servers, like enforcing policies, scanning for vulnerabilities, configuring and deploying software, all those things that we really found were a significant struggle as all of our workforce went remote through COVID. Since these systems are no longer sitting in state facilities or state buildings, it was really hard for us to manage all of those devices or find vulnerabilities or patch all those devices. So we wanted to find something that we could provide both for our state agencies and local governments that would solve that problem, and then continuously doing those security assessments. And what exactly does that look like? As mentioned, this started out as a Homeland Security grant funded program 4 years ago. It's increased in scope over the past 3 years, and specifically this year with Governor Ducey's significant support and the legislature approving, we've added an additional $10 million to the state budget appropriated to our team to provide these cyber tools out to our local government entities. And this is ongoing funds. It's not one-time grant funding. This is expectation that this program is going to continue in perpetuity, and ideally add additional funds in coming years so we can address more of those significant cyber threats and cyber risks across all of our local government entities. Something else that was very significant that's been talked about multiple times today is all of the private sector partners. Obviously, government cannot do all of these things on its own. We have to rely on the private sector to be able to provide a lot of these capabilities. Of course, government can help support these things. We can help deploy them. We can help configure them. But we do not have the capabilities and resources to be able to develop very significant, very sophisticated cybersecurity protective tools. So we rely very heavily on our private sector partners. These are just a few of them. Obviously, some of these names look very familiar since they were speaking today. We utilize a lot of these here in the state of Arizona, both in our state agencies and across our local government entities. Something else that we're doing this year is working on partnering with information sharing groups like MSISAC to have them sort of fuse this information that we're collecting from the Arizona ISAC. An organization here in Arizona is the Arizona Cyber Threat Response Alliance. They are sort of the bridge between private sector and public sector when it comes to information sharing. Not surprisingly, large private sector organizations and small to medium businesses feel very uncomfortable sharing cyber threat attack information or indicators of compromise with government directly. So having that intermediary, that bridge that allows that sort of anonymous capability to say, hey, we had something happen in the energy sector without giving away that our major energy provider has been breached in some way. But we can get that cyber threat information shared out to all of our partners in a timely fashion is something that we found is significant and critical here in Arizona. So with all that being said, I know I ran through that very quickly. I'll just open it up to questions for you, gentlemen.
Ryan, I appreciate you and the presentation and work that you and your leadership and Governor Ducey did there in Arizona. If you don't mind me asking, going back to 2018, was there what made this really a priority of Governor Ducey in the legislature? What was the kind of impetus behind this, other than we know that there's cybersecurity issues all over the country, but what made this a priority for your administration with Governor Ducey?
Yeah, for sure. And realistically, this is something that we've seen sort of historically in the state of Arizona, right? Is our governor has been on the forefront of being the cyber governor, right? He pushed very heavily for an understanding of what the risk perspective was in the state of Arizona, utilizing several platforms to boil down that complicated question of where are my vulnerabilities and how risky is doing business here. To a very simple credit score that we could communicate to our executives and our directors in the legislature. And that really drove that question of, okay, now we understand the risk. What do we do with that? How do we deploy further protections? Is this just a state of Arizona problem, or is this all of our local governments are experiencing the same thing? We saw significant data breaches around the early to mid 2000s that really drove a lot of these questions. And that's really only ramped up over the past decade. I believe there was an article that came out yesterday or the previous day that essentially said $1.2 billion in ransomware transactions were conducted through this nation's banks. And that was 3 times increase over last year's ransomware transactions. And the trend is only increasing year over year. Vulnerabilities are going up as technology becomes more ubiquitous and states are pushing for more digital services. That means a larger attack surface that needs to be protected. And that's something that, frankly, Governor Ducey and his administration have been really on the forefront of pushing, that seeing that threat coming, seeing those vulnerabilities exist. What do we do to address those, and what are the protections we can put in place to make sure that we're keeping our citizens and our services secure?
Thank you. Senator Albers has a question.
Thank you. That great presentation. I think this is very informative for us to understand what Arizona has done and the great steps. And I think the greatest form of flattery is imitation. So we may beg, borrow, and steal some of your great work and ideas. That being said, I think you mentioned that the U.S. Department of Homeland Security assisted you with a grant to begin with. I'm curious if you can share any of the numbers of what the operating costs were, what the grant was, and how you maintain that on a annual basis now.
Yeah, for sure. So starting out 4 years ago, this was through the State Homeland Security Grant Program. And I believe we applied for approximately $60,000, which is absolutely nothing in today's costs when it comes to cyber protections. But we wanted to focus on one critical item, which was how do we protect our people? So we answered that question by providing security awareness training to a significant number of local governments, counties and cities across the state of Arizona. Something that my boss is very fond of saying is that we've taken our small 16-person cybersecurity team and turned it into a team of 16,000 or 36,000 cyber professionals across the state, because we're building that culture, that understanding that cyber risk exists. But obviously, that's not the only risk that's out there. So the following year, which was, I believe, year 2 of the Homeland Security Grant Program funded services, was, I believe, approximately $200,000. So we added multi-factor authentication that year. We understood that the other significant risk as we move environments to the cloud, as we move environments out of our state facilities, we're now accessing all of these things remotely. We need to ensure that we are who we say we are. So getting that little code when you log into your email or your bank account, ensuring that that system is protected, and that even if you get a phishing email and someone steals your password or guesses your password, they still can't get into your critical systems. So that was really the next big focus in year 2. Year 3, we ramped this up, and I believe we were awarded approximately $600,000 through the federal program. And we added advanced endpoint protection and the protection of our web applications. So all of those external internet-facing applications that provide those citizen services. That, again, didn't cover all of those issues, right? That was sort of a small portion, several counties, several cities, and just enough to sort of address really those most critical and most at-risk organizations. This year, with, again, significant support from Governor Ducey's office, that $10 million is now devoted out of state coffers, so we can continue this ongoing program, which, again, as you mentioned, with federal funding, there's always that endpoint of when is this potentially going to go away, right? So we wanted to be able to cut that off and essentially say, look, we're going to support this at a state level. We've got support from the governor's office. We've got support from the budget office. We've got support from our legislative budget council. Let's turn this up to 11 and really make it go. Something else that was a real struggle as part of getting that Homeland Security funding was that didn't cover K-12 school districts. It was a really hard sell to say we're using Homeland Security funding, which is going to first responders and law enforcement and border security. How do we give those funds to K-12s? Because they're not really supporting that Homeland Security mission. With this additional state funding, and obviously with the state and local cyber grant coming from the IIJA bill this year, K-12s are specifically called out, knowing that is a significant risk, knowing that they are just as under attack and just as at risk as other local government entities.
One follow-up question, if I could. In total, how many staff, both full-time and or contractors, do you currently employ?
So on our team directly, we are 25 current staff. 5 of those are interns, 20 are full-time employees, including myself. Across the entire state of Arizona, cyber professionals range from around 75 to 100 because as I know your state is, a lot of our state agencies are highly federated and like to do their own thing, which, good on them. They've got their mission to accomplish. But our team is obviously relatively small, especially as we expand this mission out into supporting our locals. And we're continuously asking for additional support, both on the full-time and the contractor side of things.
Great. Thank you.
Yes, sir.
I think, Ryan, I don't have any other questions. I'm good. Ryan, thanks for joining us today. We really do appreciate you taking the time to join us.
Absolutely. Thank you, gentlemen. I appreciate the time today. And if there's any follow-up questions, I can certainly take those later.
All right. Thank you, sir.
Thank you so much.
Our next presentation is Scott Mahoney here. Scott. Scott is with SHI, and the floor is yours. You're our final presenter.
Okay, thank you. Good afternoon, everyone. As they mentioned, my name is Scott Mahoney. I'm a Chief Information Security Officer for the field, the client-facing side for SHI. And we're going to talk about threat-informed defense today. We'll talk about the MITRE framework, what it is and how to leverage it, modern-day threats and pain, and the MITRE threat-informed defense, and then summary. So a little bit about MITRE. I see that Palo Alto mentioned them. I'm glad to see that. MITRE is a not-for-profit company, provide engineering and technical guidance for the federal government. They were established in about 1958, created an advanced air defense framework for the Air Force out of MIT laboratories. Throughout the evolution of MITRE in the late 90s, they came up with the concept of common vulnerabilities and exposures, CVEs. Allowed us to bridge the gap between government and industry and how we deal with common threats and vulnerabilities. A lot of organizations to this day are still using this type of methodology, and CVEs are normally, if you have a vulnerability scanner in an environment, you're scanning for these known vulnerabilities, which are in the form mediating those vulnerabilities through patching software or configuration settings on there. Nothing wrong with that type of methodology. It does help reduce your attack surface, but that is actually a very reactive approach in dealing with cyber threats today. Then we evolved to MITRE ATT&CK, which is a real world cyber adversary tactics, techniques, and procedures. This is the foundation of threat-informed defense. We then go to MITRE Ingenuity, which actually performs attack evaluations. This is, they evaluate cybersecurity products using an open methodology based on the attack knowledge base. And these are actually real world examples of how these attacks were conducted. This allows organizations to improve, provide transparency on their products and how they perform, and also enhance capabilities that can further harden those against those attacks. Then we have the MITRE Attack Defender, and that's basically a training and certification program produced by MITRE's own subject matter experts. So by leveraging the MITRE ATT&CK framework, it's our best measurement of capability of our security defenses, provides historical visibility and analytics, shows us what our protections and detections capabilities are in our ecosystem, and identifies any potential gap areas with tooling, and that could include people, process, and technology. Ultimately, it enabled us to quickly understand why and how the attack happened, provide us a faster mean time to detect the threat or incident, and improves our mean time to respond to the threat. A gentleman by the name of David J. Bianco created this threat intelligence pyramid of pain, which is basically ranks various indicators of compromise that a security team may use to detect threats. Each IOC corresponds to the level of damage it would have on a threat actor's efforts if the organization were able to block that IOC from being exploited. As it starts off in the bottom, hash values are very trivial for a threat actor to change if they're blocked. IP addresses and domain names, easy and simple. Where we start getting to the point when we change network and host artifacts, that becomes very annoying for the threat actor to change those and their attack method. When we get to where they have tools, it's very challenging if we block the tools that they use or we implement tools to prevent. And then when we focus on their tactics, techniques, and procedures, those are actually adversary behaviors. We focus on those and block or prevent those. That is very tough for the threat actor to overcome and continue their attack. You should have detection and protection capabilities at each level of the pyramid, and those should also be validated by emulating attacker activities at each level. But if we focus on the top of the pyramid, those are the techniques, sub-techniques, and procedures of our adversaries. We have threat-informed defense, and that implies a deep understanding of adversary tradecraft and technology to protect against, detect, and mitigate cyber attacks. And it is a community-based approach to a worldwide challenge. If you're familiar with the MITRE attack, it's normally presented in the form of a matrix, as you see here. Our first row are our tactics, and those are the goals of our adversaries. Each tactic will contain techniques, which are how the goals are actually obtained by the adversary. And in some cases, you'll have sub-techniques associated with the main technique. And as far as procedures, if we drill down to each of those techniques or sub-techniques, those are real-world examples of the actual procedures on how the threats or attacks were conducted. You can also use the MITRE attack framework to measure threats and the overall maturity of our program, and basically determine if our controls are working as intended. Sort of a scorecard, if you will, throughout the process. This enabled us to also look at the highest risks to our organization and how we're performing. If we don't have funding in a particular area that is a high risk, we need to allocate additional funding or resources and those type of attacks. So in summary, threat-informed defense allows us to optimize our cybersecurity programs. Is your cybersecurity spend appropriate and allocated to the highest risks of the organization? Do you have the right people, process, and technology in place? It allows you to continuously validate your security controls to ensure they're working at all times. Cyber threat intelligence is a must-have for any cybersecurity program. By combining cyber threat intelligence plus the attack framework, it allows your organizations to evolve from a very reactive to a proactive methodology to get in front of some of these attacks by focusing on threats that matter the most. It also provides you with visibility to the effectiveness of your security defenses. A plethora of resources out there and information on MITRE through websites, blogs, Twitter, LinkedIn. They also provide free training online that you can use for your teams to bring them up to speed on how you get started with MITRE, how to actually operationalize it, and how to continue. And there is actually a repository of mitigations for each of these tactics, techniques, and procedures that adversaries have used. A lot of these TTPs that are out there from the most notable attacks over the past few years that are nation state backed. And there's also a calculator online to allow you to prioritize your TTPs to see, based on the regulatory framework you use in your organization, how to prioritize which TTPs that are highest risk to your organization as well. And I thank you for your time and open up for any questions that you may
Thank you for attending. I don't know that I have any questions.
Okay.
Senator Jones.
That pyramid that we saw, that was, when you say it was easy, that was easy for the attackers to get, when we say easy and then hard, that was the attackers, when we say it was easy, not for us to protect, but easy for them to get through up until the top. Is that what that
It
is?
can be a combination of both, depending on the tools that you have in your security program. So hash values, IP addresses don't. Most of your security tools do detect those fairly easily. So it can be dual effort on your security team's behalf to get into the TTPs. It's resource intensive and skill intensive for your security teams to detect those things, which is why we try to leverage something free like MITRE. And also for your threat actors, right? People are creatures of habit. So threat actors normally do the same type of things and try to replicate the same behavior. So if we, as Jeff from CrowdStrike mentioned earlier, this doorknob is turning. This is not the way that Jeff turns the doorknob, right? So those are indicators of attack that we can focus on. If we cut the legs out from under those, we thwart the entire attack. They're more likely to move on to it.
Senator Rhett, you still there?
Yes, sir. I'm still here.
Yeah,
Can you hear me?
yes, sir. Do you have any questions? The last presenter?
No, no, I don't. I appreciate it though. Thank you so much.
All
Thank
right.
you.
Thank you. Jeff.
Thank you.
Appreciate it.
So that's the end of our meeting. Again, our next meeting is December 13th. Anna, what time? 10 o'clock at the state capitol. We'll send out another announcement as we get closer. Again, we do have a website or link set up for public feedback. We'll send that around. That should be in some of the press releases and things that we've pushed out to the public from the Senate press office. And also too, if you have specific recommendations or things that you're wanting to include or anything you want to send any of the committee members, again, I do ask that you try and send those before Thanksgiving. So we have enough time to kind of digest those, follow up with questions, but also being sensitive to our Senate Research Office and other staff that are going to help put this report together before we actually vote on it on December 13th in Atlanta. If y'all have any follow-up questions, follow up with me or Senator Jones or anyone or Anna in our office, and we will follow up as quick as we can. So with that, I just say thank you, Augusta University, for having us. Senator Jones, as always, thank you for having us and being an awesome partner. And the meeting is adjourned. Thank you.